fucking name!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe. Hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patrons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Moon Harvest, Amish Earther, Naughty Thumbnails, Mitch Kennedy, Original D-Rose, Rod, The Name's Burley, Twad Wazzle, Jason Hornsby, Christoph Fournier, Flat Earth Travolta, J Mel's 24, Unimento, M Iron 26, Endless, Flat Earth Sage, Goldie McKinnon, Phoenix Rising 86, Retro Bill, More Books, Canna Bear, Fibre Oats, Bogey, Michael Kahn, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Mel B Styles, Harry Blade, Mobile Mac 777, Rob W, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Maria Nealands, Unbelievable Productions, Brewery Ranger, Henrik 86, Abraham Mohammed, Skeptic 936, Life is Short, Texas Mike, Tina Baker, David Wayne Foster, and Dank. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show. Yeah, the reason I'm late starting is because the computer was being twitchy. I'm like, okay, so I told Neil yesterday it crashed after about 12 hours of use. I'm like, okay, well, I've got to get to the bottom of this. What's causing that? So I started figuring it out. And then this morning, after extensive testing, just load up all the software as I would normally. And on, like, Google, the stuff on the window is just vanishing and then coming back. What the hell's going on? This is really bizarre. It, to me, suggests it's something to do with the GPU, because if it was something to do with the CPU or the memory, it would just crash. So I'm like, okay, well, this is weird. It shouldn't be doing that. So I couldn't figure out why. Well, in the last couple, I'm like, what have I changed? What's the last thing that you change? You tend to only change one thing at a time, so that if something goes wrong after it, that's the thing. Well, what I'd recently done was changed the GPU from being favor performance to just default settings, which is like the computer program that's running will decide if it needs to run at high performance mode. I'm like, well, I don't need it to constantly run in high performance mode, so I'll just turn that off. So it used about half as much power in idle. The problem being that where I've tested it, and I hadn't realised, I've got a little widget that runs, just tells me that the GPU's running. That's all. The only purpose I've got for it is this little AI 3D widget that strolls around the screen and occasionally says, hey, if you've fallen asleep. It's just a virtual pet, it's called. But what I didn't realise was that's a 3D application, and it's holding the GPU in a state where it's ready to run a game or ready to run an application. You know, it's permanently a decent power level. Not high, but higher. So when I've turned that off, it's suddenly operating at a much lower part of the voltage curve, which I didn't test. So, yeah, it's using a lot less power, but I'm like, I haven't actually tested if that amount of power and that amount of voltage works at that frequency, and it doesn't. So it took me about, I don't know, a day and a half to actually get to the bottom of it, and it's only in the last 25 minutes that I've actually figured that out. I'm like, because I just happened to go into MSI. I'm like, maybe it's something going on weird with the voltage. I'll just bring up the voltage curve and just watch it as I load up the applications and see what's happening. And because I've tested it before, I know where it should be and what it should be doing. I'm like, oh, it's much lower. Why is that? Oh, yes, of course, I've turned off favor performance. So now it's operating in a different part of the curve, and it's not stable there. So it's like, oh, shit. So
and you thought you were free.
Well, no, I'm still testing. As I say, Neil, this is like, imagine when you first get the computer, when you've got it for the first couple of months, you iron out those little creases. Well, I'm doing that now in a nice, soft way where, oh, right, should I just turn off the favor performance mode? Yeah, one change. Not one change and then change a load of other things and test it and tune it and test it and tune it. I'm not having to do that anymore. So one little alteration has actually caused instability. That's fine. You know, I know what I changed last. So I'll just go back and figure out why that change has caused it to be unstable. And I've addressed it. Or I've done a quick and dirty address to it just before the show started. So hopefully it'll be okay. It was okay yesterday, and it was running.
I'm just wondering, does anybody else that has YouTube channels have this problem?
No, most people have got a computer that's just got a AIO water cooler all in one. and they just run the fans at 50%, and it's completely fine, you know. But this isn't like that. This system's passive, and the cooler's designed to run a maximum of 150 watts, and the chip's 250 watts. The GPU is finally in line with what the cooler's designed for. It's max 250 watts for the GPU. It's about about 220 watts, this GPU. Great. So that's completely under control. But yeah, I'm just getting to the ends of little minor niggles, Neil. The computer hasn't crashed. I mean, it did, but after, like I say, a half day of use, very, very intensive use all day and doing a show. So, you know, that's what's made me look at it. But you don't know until you do these things, until you use it all day. You don't, and then find right at the end, literally at 1 a.m., it crashes. You're like, oh, okay, well, it's obviously not 100% stable then. I just have to go back and tweak it a little bit more. As opposed to every single time you turn the damn thing on, it crashes, which is how it was when I first got it.
I just remembered it's because your issue with the fans. I would have never asked that question if I would have remembered. You are not a fanboy.
No. You got to realize that Nathan is like Formula One. If you ever watch a Formula One car race, they have a whole team with computers with sensors on the car. They know exactly what to do, when to do it. This is the kind of computer Nathan has.
No, I know that, but he's his own worst enemy because, like I asked, other shows don't have this problem because they don't have an issue with the little. Well, I wouldn't say little because those fan noises drive me crazy too.
No,
they
but
take over the whole room.
You're not understanding what I'm saying. Nathan wants a Formula One vehicle that goes 200 miles an hour and doesn't blow up, doesn't get too hot, the brakes last for the whole race. Others have a Toyota or a Chevy or something. It's not, I mean, Nathan's sound quality is incredible.
Yeah, because he has no fans making noise in the background.
I'm striving to get it to be good. I want it to be good.
He has a higher standard.
That's it. High standards, yeah. I've just got a high standard. The computer's no different. I've got a high standard for what I want it to do, and you can only work with what you've got. Now, in all honesty, if I had have built this computer as opposed to it being gifted to me by a very generous person who watches the show, then I wouldn't have bought this particular type of computer. I would have built something subtly or very different. But ultimately, that doesn't matter. I've got it now, and it, you know, after one or two major hardware changes to it, it now works really, really, really well, and has done for what, about a month. Yeah, it's had a couple of little niggles, is what I'd expect with a new computer. And as of when it had the new GPU and memory fitted, that's how I treat it. It's been a new computer since then, and having a couple of little teething problems with a new computer, even though it's a year old, is fine. Previously, for the year prior, it did not work. It wasn't a functioning computer ever in that entire year.
Wow. Well, anyway, since it's been a year since Paul was generous enough to do that great thing. But Paul, if you're still listening to the show, I miss you, buddy.
Nathan, today's review video is similar to yesterday, only in one sense. It covers that smash and grab asteroid story, you know, that NASA has, but it's Dr. Becky. It's incredible. But I thought it would be good because Dr. Becky downloaded the 274-page NASA document on the smash and grab asteroid scooper, and it's talking about hypothesis. And so I've listed for you the video, the minute marks, and then excerpts from people in chat, and then excerpts from the 274-page document. You're going to have a blast sharing what a real hypothesis is versus what they're saying it is.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, I say that because we lost touch with him. He doesn't talk to us anymore.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Adam.
Going well for your 10th?
Pardon?
It's 10th. It's not going well for him. 4-0 down at lunch.
What's that?
You're not watching the golf?
Oh, no.
Oh, that stupid Riders Cup.
You know, I did see...
America sucks in that. England dominates.
I was fine-tuning... I was fine-tuning today's review video, but I did see that the U.S. lost 4-0.
Yeah, I'm still looking forward to a nice weekend of golf, though, mate.
Yeah, but the
Yeah.
Brits dominate the Ryder Cup. We don't even have a shot.
You know, when it comes to sports, the best team usually always wins. So you can't argue about that. Doesn't matter who the team is.
Yeah, I understand that. I know that, but I don't think well, I don't know. They got better golfers. That's all. Same thing last night watching the football game. Detroit Lions used to get beat up all the time by the Green Bay Packers. Not last night. They didn't.
Alrighty.
Anyway,
Yeah,
I'm going to use this second again to say, Paul, we miss you and come back to us.
Didn't know he went away.
Yeah, I don't know anything about this story here.
He's talking about the guy that bought me this PC that I've spent 12 solid
Yeah,
months
it's not.
moaning
It's
about.
not a story.
I can't imagine why he would disappear. Anyway, this PC I've been moaning about for 12 straight months that he spent a shitload of money on.
No, that's not why. It has nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with his generosity. It has nothing to do with you moaning about it. He just just stopped communicating with us.
I've got to get a cup of coffee.
So,
Can you keep talking for 5 minutes while I do that? Because
I'm just reaching out because I know he still listens and saying, "Come back." Anyway, what's going on with Flat Earth? You got a video for us, 10th man?
Yeah, it's Dr. Becky talking about hypothesis testing with the smash and grab asteroid scooper duper thing. It should be interesting.
You know about hypothesis anyway. Last I heard of her, she doesn't even know what one is.
Well, this is why we're going to break down the video, because if today's standards or anything goes for hypothesis, then Bob's your uncle.
It's interesting how they release a story like this and then everybody talks about it and just like reinforces the story.
That's how they do it.
Yeah.
You say it long enough, often enough, it's real.
And it also shows you that people like can easily get stuck like in parrot mode, right? They just parrot and they don't look into it, right?
Exactly.
Well, because they're being spoon-fed everything. No one does their own research. No one's critical about everything being said to them until they get screwed on some contracts because they never read the fine print. And then they'll say, you know what? I'm never going to sign the contract till I read it all the way through. And then they start reading and go, I don't understand this.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I actually did one time sign something, and it got me in trouble as a result. I'm like,
Well, I listed, it's a master B, but I listed 3 comments in Dr. Becky's video today. One says, exciting times in science, also the flow chart. The next one says, science never fails to endlessly blow my mind. I love it. And the other one says, first time watcher here, I almost clicked away. Thank you so much for being a real science channel. It's really hard to find real channels, and we need more of you. I'm aware of that. I don't know how to be successful on YouTube, but seeing you, don't give up. You're great. So this is the response people have to what we're going to review today, and they think it's real science.
Yeah, 10th man, how many of us, before QE opened us up to the understanding of the scientific method, we fell into the same trap they did?
Well, right. But we didn't fall into the same trap after we were taught what real science is. They're still in it. We use
Correct.
critical thinking and we say, oh, well, you know what? We need to look at it this way because this is in context the right way. So anytime someone elucidates a true teaching on something and you still hold on to the old one, which is false, well, shame on you.
Please don't leave huge chunks of dead air. Please.
I was expecting someone to respond.
I'm waiting to respond. I don't want to cut anybody off, but just as I was about to,
Well-
Nathan sticks his mouth in there. I was going to say.
Hang on. First of all, you were waiting to respond. You didn't want to go back to your old self so we don't have dead air. Come on.
Well,
Good
I
morning,
waited for you to finish your sentence. I gave a couple of seconds, and then I was going to answer.
That's all right.
Wait
D-Rose
a
is here. It's
Wait a
all right.
second, D-Rose is here. There's not going to be any more dead air from now on.
That's what I'm saying. D-Rose is here. Neil and D-Rose take over. Go.
Good
In
morning.
the middle of me speaking, I had to be announced that D. Rose was here. What I was saying is, yes, we've come to the understanding and we've turned from our wicked ways of scientism and pseudoscience, and now we know the scientific method. We're dangerous.
No, we came out of the cave. We went back in the cave and said, hey, what you see in the cave is not reality. Let me show you what's going on. And no one believes us.
Excuse me, Tim. I got a question. Those things, what are those? I'm looking for my phone. It's so small. I can't really see them.
If you go to the YouTube link of Dr. Becky and hit more, that thing that says more on the site, it shows a document from NASA that's 274 pages about the hypothesis testing they're going to do on the scooper duper grab and smash asteroid the drone that came and deposited a sample. So it's so funny.
Okay. All right. I'll do that.
Yeah, it's crazy how many hypotheses they got, which they've already made up their mind what it is. Good morning. Good morning.
Thank God it's Friday.
You don't like mentioning the day.
Hello.
It makes the shows less timeless, D.
Okay.
But yes, indeed, it is Friday. As we just these let the cat out of the bag, and this will date very badly if you're listening back in the future.
Yeah, it's Friday, the 29th of September.
I gotta say, Nathan, that was a very weak rebuttal to D Rose after you said the same word.
I thought I'd say it, but I just keep saying it. But there we go. Such is life. Anyway, where are we at in terms of housekeeping? What questions have we not covered as it is the end of the week? And
Molten iron core you haven't done for a while.
Wait a second. Let me say something quick. There's some issues with Discord, just so you guys know. It's like reported everywhere else. So if you notice anything wrong, just don't worry about it, okay?
What do you mean, something wrong?
What kind of thing is wrong?
Well, I checked the down detector, right, to see if there's issues with Discord, because people have been reporting them, including myself. I can't even get on at the moment. So it's just something to know. There's some issues Discord are resolving. That's it. Okay?
Yeah,
Okay,
I've got an issue. It doesn't
we just found out down was relative, so now there's a detector for down.
want to be framed the way it usually is, which is irritating. It normally says the word live stream, and it's cutting off two of my guests. But there we go. Other than that, I mean, I've reported that to you as an issue, but I mean, I could correct it in OBS. I'm not going to. I'm going to ask any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety.
We know the Earth's spinning because there's no Coriolis deviation, and it seems like lockstep. Everything is lockstep.
No, we know the Earth's spinning because the water is held to it. All the oceans are glued to it, and so are we.
No, in celestial navigation, you got to assume the Earth is stationary and the stars are spinning.
No, the Earth is a reversed bucket spinning around.
A reverse bucket, I got it. Okay, that makes sense. But that's pale in comparison to what I said.
That's a reversal of bucket. That's a reversal of bucket fallacy.
Reversal of bucket. I like it.
Tim, how do you come up that quick? That was so spontaneous. There's a pair. How do you do that with these puns?
Well, there were three of them, but you caught that third one. I told Nathan it was a weak response to your Friday, WEEK, but no one caught that one either.
He's gone in the depths with these.
I sure didn't. Nope.
It's taken you guys a whole month to catch up. I get it. Okay.
Listen, we got it, but the rule is you got to leave it alone.
Hot potato, huh?
Any evidence that you can have a gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
Even NASA says you can't.
Well, that
I
depends.
can show you, but I need a couple of containers to demonstrate it.
That
Or a
depends.
syringe.
Am I a container? Because I have gas right now and it's contained. But if you poke me in the stomach or pull my finger, the gas comes out. So I guess
What's that contained?
That's you got a shut-off valve and an opening valve. That's all that is. Don't worry about it, D-Rose.
Well, that's what Zanuck said, that there's a valve. Remember Zanuck with the valve?
Well, what do you think sphincters are for?
Okay, are we done?
I don't know. This is a crazy day. I can't
It's
stomach.
getting weird, guys.
Yeah, we're only going to cover a couple of housekeeping questions. These guys were in a funny mood. They were talking about sports in the pre-show, so it's just the way it goes sometimes. Okay, so we're covering Dr. Becky today. As always, let Dr. Becky know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me with a nice, clean, positive comment that beyond saying at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me, lets her know in a roundabout way that we did actually cover a video. And hopefully, if Dr. Becky were to respond in any way, she would put, hopefully, a link to our video, helping us in the algorithmic love where YouTube offer us none. So let her know. At Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. We're going to get right into this. It's following on from yesterday with Neil deGrasse Tyson on CNN talking about scooping up soil from the sky. Becky's along the similar lines from what 10th Man's already told us, explaining that based on the research of the documents that have been released from NASA, whoever it is, in terms of their hypothesis construction.
And 10. Then JAXA's Hayabusa 2 mission returned 5 grams of material from the asteroid Ryugu in 2020. And now OSIRIS-REx has returned from the much older asteroid Bennu, with over 60 grams of material from the asteroid that we can now study alongside the material that Hayabusa brought back.
So for billions and billions and billions, what they've managed to do is bring you back a few grams of soil from the sky. Utterly absurd. You don't get soil from the sky. It's just total nonsense.
To answer questions about how our solar system formed and where...
Why? What speculative time travel questions about what you say happened in a heliocentric model that isn't real, and you're spending billions on it. Just to lie to people. These rockets and spaceships have not been to a sky vacuum to collect soil. It's absurd.
Where did the ingredients for life come from? Now,
you've already got a story for this, though, haven't you, Becky? It was all made in the hearts of dying stars that follow entropic law after their death. Yeah, that's right. After their death, after they implode, they then explode, depositing all of the, according to you, required materials for life to randomly coalesce to form life later in the timeline. Now, that's your story that you already tell people. But you need to know more. What do you need to know more about? You've already got the story. What expansion on that is ever going to help you? Well, it isn't. But knowing that soil is coming from the sky, and therefore the worlds that we're lied into believing are out there, and we'll never get to, have definitely got material. Here's some of it. Yeah, total nonsense.
Now, we've answered a lot of questions like that before by studying meteorites, so asteroids that have actually impacted with Earth, but we're limited.
Says you. More soil from the sky.
Limited to how much we can actually learn from them, because as they fall through the atmosphere and impact with the Earth, they become contaminated.
Do they? Where are they coming from? These lights that you see, right, in the sky, they're saying that they produce rocks. Show me footage of a rock coming from the sky and landing. I want to see that. Has anybody seen that beyond the movies? I've seen a shooting star. My folks used to live in a part of England that is the lowest natural light you can have in the entire country. And at points when there was no moon out, you could see shooting stars all night long. Yeah, some big, some small. Now, I don't for 1 second think there were rocks attached to any of them. But the implication is that some of them have got rocks and you just go and get them, but they are contaminated. Oh, well, that's useful.
So there's always that little shadow of doubt that whatever you find from studying
plausible deniability, you mean?
Meteorites could actually just be something on Earth that's contaminated.
Yeah, it could be. Why would you drop in this plausible deniability? It's because it's complete lies.
Sample. But actually going to an asteroid in space, collecting a sample there...
There are no asteroids in space. There are no rocks in the sky. Rocks don't come from the sky.
Bringing it back to Earth means we have these incredible asteroids that we can now study alongside... OSIRIS-REx. So the mission was launched on the 8th without its robotic arm to collect as much material as possible that was thrown up in the cloud. At that point, the team at NASA estimated that it had collected...
They all jump up for joy. Right? What are they actually looking at?
Around about 57 grams of material from the surface of Bennu. It then spent a couple more months in orbit around Bennu before being deorbited in May 2021 and started...
There are no orbits. This derivation of a flat plane measurement to give you this Kepler-based nonsense, to assert that you've got robots out in the Kepler-based assumptions measured from flat planes, it's utterly absurd when you really break it down. Yeah, it is just like talking about how Narnia operates and then telling you about the rocks we've brought back from Narnia.
Its journey back to Earth. The sample then touched down at 8:42
Okay, I want to get past the summary right, 10th. Do you know where she starts talking about the scientific method and the documentation therein?
I put an image there where it shows the time marks if you go to the first image.
Okay, so 133 Osiris, 508. Next timestamp. Okay, let's go to
local
that.
time on Sunday. Then take here, these scientific news to the rare 74-page document for you. It's been written by the OSIRIS-REx team, and it outlines the 70 different hypotheses that they will test with the sample returned from Bennu.
So it's right out there in this instance. Good catch, 10th. In this regard, what they're actually publishing is their magic trick, because they're saying these words like hypotheses. Well, that's got a very specific meaning to it. Yeah, scientific prediction. So if they're scientists with hypotheses, then they're making scientific predictions. Scientific predictions are a suppositional statement of cause and effect. Now, I'm going to stick my neck out and say not one of these will be that.
There is a giant flowchart with all the text.
She's already ruined it just while we talk through it. She's already just explained about the flowchart. Go ahead, Adam. We'll listen to that again.
So did she say 70 different hypotheses there?
17, I think.
Regardless, a number.
Oh,
Why?
It's very interesting, isn't it? That doesn't fit matter, does it? 17 different hypotheses.
Oh, but for what? I mean, I wasn't asking you. I was asking in regards to for what? What's the naturally occurring phenomena? What are they studying 17 times over? What 17 phenomena have they got, or did they have one and fail 16 times?
70.
You don't think that catch and grab was a natural phenomenon?
Well, remember, what are we going to do? We're going to science this rock. Apparently, we're going to do science on the sample.
But they've already told us they're not going to do that either. They're going to extrapolate how our life began. That's what they're going to do. She's already told us that too. That's not science.
What Adam is trying to say, I think what Adam is trying to say is you have a hypothesis for one thing, and here they've got all these. And if you go to the document that I posted, you can see all the different hypotheses they've got.
Oh, let's do that. I'm much more inclined to do that. Hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's so we're claiming we're going to do something. As I can see it, we're about to just analyze some rock, right? We're might get some compositional information. That's all we can do with it, isn't it? I'm not sure what else we can do with this, irrespective of where we claim it's from. What science are we going to do? Are we going to find the cause of the rock?
No.
Yeah, but their science is different than
Let Adam make his point.
So that is the point. Becky's initial assumption of what she's doing is not science. She's labeling it as science. She's trying to give it some credence that these 17 hypotheses will yield some scientific knowledge. As far as I can see, she's going to do a bit of rock analysis, whatever's in there.
Wouldn't that be geology? Another pseudoscience.
Oh.
Well, can I point out something that Adam pointed out yesterday? And I posted it in Master B. It's two screenshots. One is of the one you just showed. What are these people celebrating? And they're wearing masks. The other is people picking up the samples, not wearing masks.
Well, before
No
we get to that,
suits.
we're talking about the magic trick that's being employed. So before we get to the nitty-gritty of the methodology of the magic trick is claiming science. Now, you can see on screen now, 10th's gone to great efforts to give us a really good presentation, so thank you, 10th. But he's highlighting some of these comments. Exciting times in science. Also, that flow chart. No. Why are these two things in the same statement? Science never fails to endlessly blow my mind. I love it. Yeah, first time watcher here. I almost clicked away. Thank you so much for being a real science channel. Yeah? That's what is being employed. A magic trick. Fraud. Adam, did you get the list of... are you on your phone? Can you actually have a look at the list of hypotheses? Can we go through them? Because it's just a screenshot.
I'm kind of looking at them now. Yeah, so you want me to share it? Or?
No. I want you to have a peruse while we have a listen to the video. And then what we'll do is we'll actually have a proper close look. If that's okay by you.
Yeah. May I suggest something? Adam, go to the actual channel of hers, hit more, and there's the first link. It takes you to the 274-page NASA document, and you'll be able to, I just listed some of the hypotheses. There's more than what I listed.
You realize Adam's at work, right?
Well, he just said he was going to post it.
Okay, we'll play on.
Gentlemen, can I say something?
Go ahead,
I want to say something real quick. And those comments that you see, you could take them in two ways. You know how you have those fraudulent scamming products that they have in-house reviews, where it's people that work for the company that put these, oh, it's great, it works fine. Or you could take it as there's literally people that naive and stupid in the world that trust this nonsense. Take it either way.
Well, I think Nathan said it best.
Advertisements here even where they just like in the advertisement they bring forth a guy in a lab coat says like, yeah, we at this institute we recommend this product, when that institute was blatantly created by the product and didn't even do anything except for show up on the advertisement.
These people are being very hard on these people that don't know yet. The people that leave these comments, they think it's science.
Look, all the hard work's been done. All you got to do is say science, and this is what Nathan is saying. All you got to do is say that word, and they think it's the real deal.
Different hypotheses that they will test with the sample returned from Bennu. There is a giant flow chart.
I mean, I'm glad we're covering this, because when people are claiming that we're infighting, when we stress the importance of understanding what science is, so you can understand when it's not being employed, like now. A good understanding of the scientific method means that 3 minutes, 5 minutes into this video, we can say, this is fraud. This won't be science. What's the natural phenomena? You've gone and collected some rocks from a fake place that doesn't exist. It's utterly absurd and fraud. Well, meanwhile, do you think we should just stand by while people call us scammers for demonstrating how it's fraud because it doesn't employ the method that would offer proof? But it's important stuff that you as flat earthers understand this. If you're watching and you're a flat earther, this is how you undo their rhetoric. This is all of their rhetoric. It's a heliocentric rhetoric with orbital motion and soil coming from the sky, rather than what you actually experience in your natural world. Soil doesn't come from the sky. But they want you to think that there's worlds out there. And look, there's 5 grams of proof from a sky vacuum. You don't believe me? Science! No, it bloody isn't.
Chart with all the tests that will be done, including the amount of the sample used for each test down to the milligram, and the description of all the techniques that will be used in all the...
Down to the milligram, because that's really important in science. No, it isn't. That's mathematics. How accurately you've got a tiny quantity of this tiny sample that's come from a place that isn't real. And you're going to put the intonation on down to the microgram. Wowee! So what if I go outside and gather up some soil and then tell you that I'm doing science and I've got the amount down to the microgram and really put intonation on how accurately I've measured it? Does that not sound like maths, Becky? Yeah, it's because it is. but you're flogging this fraud as science. So I'd expect you to detail a hypothesis as opposed to
rock solid research then, Nathan?
Pardon?
Are you saying this isn't rock solid research then?
Thank you for interrupting my disdain with a pun.
These individual tests, including spectroscopy, for example.
It's not science. That's not science. In any form. What are they talking about? Spectroscopy? Looking at light? That's not cause and effect reasoning based on a scientific prediction. That's a hypothesis. But that's what she's just told you. They're testing hypothesis. Who are? Spectroscopy.
Oh,
what?
But which spectroscopy does she mean? Actual spectroscopy, like in a vacuum chamber and all that, or the one that they supposedly analyze lights in the sky with?
Why, is one of them science? No.
Nope. But still.
It's called analysis, isn't it? But it's going to be lab-based, I think. So I've had a little look, and these hypotheses they're just guesses, statements that might possibly mean something if you follow their pre-assumptions anyway. So, like, hypothesis 3, the abundance, isotopic and chemical compositions of pre-solar materials in the return sample are similar to those in Cl and Cm chondrites. Bennu consists dust grains that condensed in the gaseous envelopes around ancient stars of the ejecta of novae or supernovae.
What? Sorry, this is in their hypothesis, this abject speculation and religious rhetoric?
That was 2 separate hypotheses, 3.1, 3.2. This is 3.3. Bennu contains dust grains that formed in the interstellar medium or were modified by processing the interstellar medium.
Does that not just sound like a declarative statement of fact? We say that these slimy substances have come from Venus, which is an alien in the Mars star quadrant. Why? Well, because that's my hypothesis. Notice how when we tell you that these frauds use the word hypothesis, because it's in reality a scientific prediction, and substitute it for a just so story. So their hypothesis is that it's come from a certain place based on a certain religious rhetoric. What an bloody outrage.
If you want to put up on the slides that Tim's shown, it's L1.5b. It's the ones just after the YouTube shots. This kind of shows you what they're going to analyze the stuff. It says, look, analyze the return sample to determine. It's the next one, I think, Nathan. That's it. And look at what they're going to determine after analyzing these rocks, I assume, using spectroscopy and maybe a few other things. But look at what they're going to determine, apparently. They're going to determine pre-solar history, the formation age of this rock, nebula and parent body alteration history they're going to detect from it, relation to known meteorites, organic history, space weathering, resurfacing history, and energy balance in the regolith of Bennu. So basically, they're just setting the stage, aren't they, to be able to go and talk a load of nonsense about basically wardrobe dynamics.
Yep.
Isn't it?
Yep. We're going to talk about how the rocks and soil from Narnia were formed and their history, and how the rocks in Narnia and their formation and history, declared in our hypothesis as a statement of fact, affect our soil and our lives. Because Narnia soil and its development is very important for our understanding. Therefore, we should pump billions into this.
Yeah, we need the Narnia soil import industry, definitely.
Which allows you to work out, what molecules and compounds the sample that you're looking at is made of. So in this case, what is the asteroid Bennu made of?
Yeah, okay, I'll buy that. So you can tell us what the soil's made of. So you can tell us what it is. Yeah, in the context of its chemical makeup, maybe. But you're not telling us what it is in terms of just what you say is the constituent parts. You're telling us its history and how it was made. You've got it self-contained in the hypothesis when you tell us where it's come from, and the place it's come from isn't real, Becky.
Then you've got microscopy.
Sorry, I just want to say it's a blue marble type situation where they will have a real sample. It just won't be from where they're saying it's from, and the people testing it won't know any different.
No. I don't dispute for 1 second that they've got the Turkish delight, but that doesn't mean it was created by a witch in Narnia. So saith the hypothesis.
Techniques to show the structure on small scales of the sample that's been returned. And then also spectrometry, which...
The problem I've got is when you say it has been returned, because that presupposes that the bullshit story about how these people who have just been handed a sample come to understand the sample's origins. Why? Well, because when it was handed to them, they were told that it came from a place that doesn't exist. Therefore, what, it's going to give you details about the place it didn't exist that you were told it came from when it was handed to you?
Which can tell you the ratio of isotopes in a sample, i.e. the amount of atoms of an element that have extra neutrons in their nucleus. Which
yeah, you can tell us that about the sample. Sorry, how does this have any bearing on it coming from Narnia?
Makes them heavier. So now measuring that ratio of the amount of normal atoms to the heavier isotopes is an incredibly useful thing to do because...
Really? So this will give us what? Computers, mobile phones, fax machines, new communication systems, better travel. What's it going to do to advance humanity, Becky? Let's hear it.
What it can tell you is things like where in the solar system an object formed, or if...
So in a solar system, so Kepler's orbital model, it can tell you where it came from in a fantasy land invented by a man of the church to let them know when Easter would be. Really? No, it can't, Becky. Now, I listed off a whole bunch of things that might actually serve people's use, like mobile phones, fax machines, better communication, better travel, maybe better farming, better food. What about all of those things? Are any of the things that you do going to actually benefit humanity in any way, shape or form, Becky? I say no. I say you are about as expendable and disposable as any individual talking on YouTube could possibly be. Because literally, if you were eradicated from existence and nothing you had ever said had ever been uttered, it would make absolutely no difference to anybody's lives. And further to that, everything you do going forward is meaningless. It serves nobody, it benefits nobody, and will advance humanity not one iota. Nothing this pathetic individual has done in her entire career has ever, and I do mean ever, ever benefited anybody who has listened to her. Ever. Not one thing.
How about entertainment?
Sorry, did the entertainment benefit you? Did it earn you more money? Did it give you better health? Did it get you to your job quicker?
Not a lot, but...
When you say entertainment, in terms of benefit to humanity, while I appreciate that after a hard day's work at the mill, going and watching a stand-up comic can be very, very useful to your well-being. I appreciate it from that standpoint. But in terms of actual, tangible benefits to society and humanity, when it comes to astrophysicists, they offer nothing. Literally nothing at all.
Just storytelling time. That's what it is.
Just telling you about their religion. But they're calling it science. It's fraud.
Object contains pre-solar material, i.e. material that was there before the sun formed. And then also how...
That rustling from her lapel mic.
Old an object is as well. So it's an incredibly useful...
Look, if you're going to wear a lapel mic, figure out where to put it on your body and do another take if you've got all this clothing rustle all over it, Becky. Bloody hell.
Useful technique, but it is one that you have to be careful with because a sample is completely destroyed in the process as it has to be dissolved in acid. So I'll link that document with...
Pause. So See, before the sun formed, they've already got their model. They've already decided what it is. They just need to go through the image of the people retrieving this from some kind of drone that supposedly came from a second law of thermodynamics violation. And then everyone watching this stuff is saying, oh, then everything else is substantiated because look, they're testing these rocks.
They're putting them in acid, destroying them, and then there's data coming out of it, and that's science.
Yeah, let's paraphrase it. Unfortunately, you as a member of the general public will not get to taste the Turkish delights because upon testing the Turkish delights, which according to the hypothesis were created by a witch in Narnia, they are destroyed. So unfortunately, you won't get to taste the sweet, delicious Turkish delights, but you can understand that when we get the chemical composition of the Turkish delights, we affirm that they've come from Narnia.
It's the affirming bit that's interesting. If you go to the next slide, it's 18 of 274. It kind of describes what these results are going to mean. And it's describing, it's such a fancy story. Hypothesis 6, and there's a few of them, but Bennu's parent body experienced greater than 3 billion years of solar system history before being destroyed in a catastrophic disruption. Now they're going to...
Sorry, is this sorry, was that an introduction to a He-Man episode?
No, that's the introduction to the hypothesis. It's setting the scene. Yeah, well, it's the introduction to hypothesis 6 with its subpoints of 1, 2, 3, and 4. But this is what's important. So within this first main headline of the hypothesis is to investigate what happened in the more than 3 billion years of solar system history before being destroyed in a catastrophic disruption. So 6.1 will test whether Bennu's parent asteroid was scattered in the inner main asteroid belt, either through Jupiter's growth or on a fixed orbit and or by inward migration of Jupiter. Alternatively, we're going to also investigate during its residence time in the main asteroid belt, Bennu's parent asteroid accreted meter-scale or larger exogenic material, resulting in inter-asteroid mixing of macroscopic scales. Or we could go to 6.3, which is the surface regolith was gradually overturned and mixed by a gardening process on Bennu's parent asteroid. And these are the things they're going to be able to determine from the analysis of dropping in acid.
Yeah, I can rewrite all of those with Turkish delights and Narnia, can't I?
Yeah, because by dropping the Turkish delight in acid, you can tell exactly how long it had been in the bag, where it had been moved, who moved it, how they made it, what they made it with, all those greater than 3 billion years ago.
Yeah, perfectly reasonable. So says Bennu.
Adam, wouldn't putting it in acid, wouldn't that kind of destroy a lot of stuff that would give you information?
It's part of the important process because you've also got to sterilize it from space aids. So you do need the acid.
Okay, we all clear?
Yeah, they're going to put dip it in acid, and then they're going, after they destroyed loads of it, they're going to start and probably mutate it in some way.
No, then they refer back. Then they refer back to their hypothesis and decide what they're gonna tell you. And because it was already written down in a hypothesis, it's science. So therefore, their explanation after dipping it in acid becomes completely validated. 81 people watching. Please share the show.
That's exactly it, Nathan. That's exactly it. These detailed hypotheses are the things that are going to validate whatever the results will be. It means it did have a gardening process, or it might have just had some kind of accretion of larger exogenic material. And by testing it, and if we get result A or result B, then we'll know whether there was a gardening process on Bennu's parent asteroid or whether it was that exogenic material gathering.
So their DV, Adam, is some soil sample that was dipped in acid.
There's no IVDV. This isn't a hypothesis constructed in the way that we construct it. And if you want to try and sort of superimpose an IVD relationship, you're going to fail on your arse immediately, Brian. There is no way of sandwiching in a story of exploding planets and Bennu and gardening into an IV-DV relationship. That's an actual scientific prediction, otherwise known as a hypothesis. So I can appreciate your attempts to say, well, how does an IV-DV sit in this? It doesn't. It isn't. It's a just so story in lieu. This is the textbook definition of what we teach here about how science has been hijacked. Take a scientific prediction that establishes your supposed, not yet validated, cause of an effect you're studying, and replace it with this. Just so stories.
Yeah, but that's what
Don't we have a question?
Think about what I said.
I'm sorry, Brian, go ahead.
I'm just saying, if you think of, like, that's what I meant. Like, if you think about what I said, their DV, which should be their natural phenomenon, is a soil sample dipped in acid. How was that? That's not natural at all. It's not a phenomenon. It's just soil, and even at that, you took it away this natural side of it because you dipped it in acid.
Not just any soil, soil from a sky vacuum.
Don't we have a housekeeping question concerning certain fields?
Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Well, when I saw that 274-page document, I was thinking about that question. So I started to peruse it. So I just showed a few of the pages. And it's so interesting that when these guys and gals who are astrophysicists come on, they bandy the hijacking of science, hypothesis, science. And then Michio Kaku comes and says, no one goes through the scientific method here. In fact, we're going to be so far off, 10 to the 120 zeros. It is a shell game. The whole thing is a lie. And this is why this video, it's from them. It tells you how they do their so-called science. And we're going to use it from now on moving forward because it's a 274-page document telling you how unscientific the method is.
It's not unique. QE told me this about 2, 3, maybe even longer, years and years ago. I was like, he made a statement on one of his presentations that 99.9% of statistics are made. No, just joking. Of hypotheses that are labelled as such do not have an IV-DV relationship in them. They do not have a validatable experimental process and are therefore not science. Therefore, less than 1% of published quote-unquote scientific documents are not adhering to the scientific method. And we all know the definition of pseudoscience. If it hasn't adhered to the scientific method, it's pseudoscience. Well, if they haven't, which they haven't, it means that 99% of published documents are like this when they say they've got science. Very, very few will have established what they're studying as a phenomena and then supposed a cause of it to go forward to vary the cause and see if it actually caused the effect they're studying. Virtually none of them have that. This is no different in that regard.
No, I know. And that's a great thing that he showed everybody. Now, if we go into the Wayback Machine with Dr. Becky, remember the first video I ever posted of her was her listening to iTunes, eating lunch, looking at data on their computer where she said she was doing science.
Yeah, she thinks she is. She thinks looking at how accurately they've dissolved it in acid and how they've got the amount that they've dissolved down to the micron on a flow chart with this garbage as the hypothesis. She thinks that's science while she's munching on a sandwich and reading it off an email on a computer. That's absolutely correct. She thinks this is science. It's not, it's fraud.
All that detail in the video description below if you want some light bedtime reading.
Yeah, we've gone through it on the show, Becky. As before, please let Becky know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. Share the show far and wide. We should have well over 100 people watching. We've got just under 90, which isn't that great. But yeah, please share the show. And as I say, let her know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. So that if at the very least she did ever do a response, somebody one day is going to do a response and they're going to put a link to our video and people will come and hear what we have to say. In this regard, if it was this video, I'd hope they'd come and hear us pointing out that this is fraud.
But I'm also going to pick out 3 of these hypotheses that we want to test with the sample from Bennu that's been returned by OSIRIS-REx. So let's start with testing whether this material from Bennu contains the ingredients for life.
And if it does? I mean, there's a lot of constituent parts that may very well be contained in this rock that are also contained in my body. Okay, so that for correlation means causation, life came from the universe that is not real. the sky vacuum, where this soil also came from, that isn't real. No, Becky. No. Just finding that you've got a correlation between the constituent parts that are in living organisms versus the constituent parts of this rock of unknown origin for you, the researcher. Now, the claimed origin is fraud, lies, and a thermodynamics impossibility.
Now, the team are not testing for life itself on Bennu. But
shocking, because there is no Bennu. If that's out in the sky vacuum, it's just a light.
Instead, are testing to see if they can find the ingredients for life that are actually...
Testing to see if you have ingredients? See, when I go to my cupboard and, let's call it the same, test whether or not I've got the ingredients for a cake, that ain't science. Now, in science, you establish the cause of an effect. The effect being your dependent variable natural phenomena in the suppositional statement known as a hypothesis, also known as a scientific prediction. Your independent variable in the same scientific prediction will be what you think causes that. As opposed to going to your cupboard and seeing if you've got a particular list of ingredients. In this case, going to a rock of unknown origin and seeing if it has constituent parts that correlate with other things that have life in them. I'm going to guess that it probably does. So what? Will it give me better transport? Will it give me a better mobile phone? Will it give me better health? Will it give me better farming? What will it do to advance humanity, Becky, if we know that we've got a correlation between the rock of unknown origin and life itself? How's that going to help us? As I said earlier, at length, nothing this woman ever does will benefit you. Ever. This is no different. If she was at the end of her boring, expensive and useless process right now, telling you, guess what? It contains gold, just like you do. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, it is. Yeah. And that helps me because that justifies your existence and work because that justifies the money we spend going to Narnia because... Oh, it doesn't, does it, Becky, when you really think about it? It achieves nothing. Oh, other than indoctrinating people that the place that this doesn't offer any validity for actually is real. That would be the sky vacuum in violation of the second law of thermodynamics. That's the only thing it achieves. Brainwashing people into believing that there's a sky vacuum above their head. That's all this does.
Actually have thought to have been brought to...
Just on that topic, Nathan, page 12 of 274 does actually, and that Owen was right, they are using spectroscopy of the stars. Look, hypothesis 1. Remote sensing of Bennu's surface is accurately characterise its mineral, chemical and physical properties. So that the first portion to sample the stuff is to validate that when they do spectroscopy on these things, that when they make assumptions that these guesses are now validated. So they've got point 1 is to Bennu's surface primarily consists of 2 distinct lithologies defined by their normal albedo, thermomechanical properties and spectral slope. So they're going to, I think,
have a look at it. They're having a look at it.
Yeah, but are they going to match up their guesses that they've previously made by just bouncing light off of it? Is what the first part is. So is it, when they guess by bouncing light off it, is it now validated?
I'm going to go with yes, because that's what they put in their hypothesis. And if their process is bounce light off it, get answer, the answer is almost irrelevant, isn't it? Because it's going to confirm their just so story they're calling a hypothesis. 100 people watching. Woohoo! Thank you very much to all of you. Smash the share button. That's the only reason there's 100 people watching. Please share the show, and a very warm welcome if you've just joined us off the back of all the people who've kindly shared the show. Please share it yourself. Smash that share button. That's a lot of S's. Right, let's continue.
Earth by impacts with asteroids in the early days of the solar system, because...
Validated by what? Oh, you can't, because it's happening in the past in a place that isn't real.
Asteroids are essentially relics left over from the formation of the solar system.
Solar system being an invented model, a Copernican model. No, there's nothing being developed in these models that are being used to explain and predict where the stars might be in the future. In terms of telling us how we were developed in the past, that's utterly absurd. No, definitely not. It's also a reification fallacy. These models aren't our world.
They don't really have any atmospheric processes.
Atmo, what now? Sphere-shaped air in a vacuum? I think not. That's a violation of the second law of thermodynamics right in its face there, Becky. Atmosphere? Sphere-shaped air? No, definitely not. Maybe in your model, you'd have to have it in your model because the model isn't the real world. In the real world, we have the second law of thermodynamics and gas-filled space. It doesn't form sphere shapes in vacuums.
Or geological processes that can destroy any of that evidence from a time before life began on Earth.
Sorry, you say it's evidence. I say it's of unknown origin because it's definitely not come from a sky vacuum. But you also go on to say how it can validate all of your bullshit. Oh, how convenient that this dust in a small, very precise quantity can validate your entire origin story just by you tagging it on to the end after describing some tests you'll do. It's almost like a very well-organised, well-oiled charade of a magic trick that eludes that what you do is science, Becky. It isn't.
Nathan, do you see how underhandedly they're bringing in evolution and not giving credit to a creator?
That's the purpose. This is validating a story of times gone by. That's its benefit. That's what it's going to do for you. Let you know how your world came to be and its origin story. That's it. Confirming heliocentrism and evolution.
Telescope.
That's all it's doing, confirming evolution and heliocentrism. Yes. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, look at the name of their telescope, Osiris-Rex. Why did they call it that?
I think that was the so-called space.
Yeah, it's like it's not putting in the little word Rex. It's like a play on Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Okay, I see what you're putting, but I'm thinking those.
Isn't Osiris?
No.
Isn't Osiris the dog star? No, it's Sirius, isn't it? Which one's Osiris?
God of the dead.
Sorry,
the God of the dead.
God of the dead. But which star is it?
No matter what star, it's Masonic symbolism. Yeah, the God of the dead is king, Osiris-Rex.
There you go.
Well, this is what Michelle Thaler wants. Your cousin is the rocks.
Yeah, it's just their origin story.
Earth. So they really are fossils of what was happening at that time. Now,
because she says so. They're not. But that's what she's telling you. This rock of unknown origin is really a fossil that tells us our history. Is it? No?
From studying meteorites that have actually impacted with Earth.
Have actually. You see, this is why you, as the audience, should pick up on some of this linguistic trickery and go, why would you need to qualify it? Have actually, as opposed to definitely haven't not, it's all bullshit and no sky vacuum is going to provide you with rocks. Rocks aren't formed in the sky. Utterly absurd. But have actually, no, that's just part of your just so story, Becky. And this is your little tell. It lets me know that you know it needs qualifying because you've qualified it. Why? Well, because no part of the story confirms this.
We know that asteroids contain things like proteins and amino acids, these ingredients.
And you know rocks that you've been given contain those things.
That when you have the right conditions and the right chemistry,
according to your religious rhetoric and your evolution story,
are the building blocks for life.
Wrong. No, evolution's been debunked. But you definitely need to peddle that. This isn't going to give you a better phone, better health, better farming, better communication, better travel, better anything. But it will let you know that the evolution bullshit's true, because that's all this really achieves.
And so that has always supported this hypothesis that
hypothesis is not what you are doing. Fraud is what you're doing, love. Fraud.
It was asteroids that brought these ingredients to Earth.
So say you. No, I say you don't get soil from the sky.
But there's
I just want to
always
just interject there, Nathan. That's really bad. I mean, it's a good job QE's not here. She's just presupposed that you can get proteins, amino acids put together in space without life. Yeah, she's claiming that there's proteins in space rocks. Yeah, fundamentally, it's not energetically favorable, is it? It's not a chemical reaction that can happen. It requires life.
Yeah, she's saying life
Energy.
already pre-exists in the sky vacuum and we have it, we found it. Not only have they found soil in the sky, they've found life in the sky. Information is the crux of what she's saying, because what was required to have these amino acids? Information.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just a lie. It's a complete fraud.
Been that slight shadow of a doubt there that actually what you are finding in the meteorites that have impacted Earth.
That you've got to put the intonation on that they have impacted Earth. Prove it. Prove this rock came from a sky vacuum. You can't. It's a rock of unknown origin that may or may not have amino acids in it. And if it did, so what? If I knew that it hadn't come out of the ground and wasn't recently covered in worms, then I might be impressed.
Is just contaminants from Earth itself. So
why would you need to drop that little disclaimer in? What, in case you find out that the contaminants are only possible on Earth at a later date? Yeah, they've always got to drop these little subtle get-out-of-jail cards into their rhetoric. Just in case we find out that it couldn't possibly have come from space, we'll drop in that it could be that this is entirely invalidated because the entire thing's contaminated. Oh, really? So it could be the case that this is entirely validated, but you're moving forward and validating our entire life history with it. But just in case that's invalidated because it couldn't possibly have occurred in Narnia, after all, within our own rhetoric of Narnia, we'll just say that there could be contamination that could invalidate all of this later, just in case.
Should you be able to test whether this pristine sample from Bennu contains amino acids and proteins in it is something that...
Could you test that it's from Bennu? How are you going to do that?
Astrobiologists are incredibly excited for, especially because the material that makes up Bennu is thought to be incredibly old, about 4.5 billion years old, right from the early days of the solar system. So this is definitely one where
you thought it would be from the early parts of the solar system, and if you get your hands on it and put some acid on it, it's pretty much certainly going to be confirming what you've already decided and that people have pretty much thought is going to be the case. Because they've pretty much thought it and they're very excited about it. And when they get their hand on this very, very small measurement, which has been very precisely measured out, and drip a bit of acid on it, hell yeah, we're going to confirm our bullshit.
Those spectroscopy and spectrometry techniques will shine. The second hypothesis that I wanted to highlight that the team will be testing is this idea that asteroids also brought water to the early Earth. Now,
did asteroids come to Earth? Would be a better question. Did asteroids, assuming that they've definitely come to Earth and definitely came from the sky vacuum, bring water with them? You see, this question seems to automatically include the assumption that these rocks came from the sky. Yeah, I wouldn't be going with that. I'd want to know that they definitely did come from the sky, because that seems utterly absurd to me. Go ahead, Adam.
It was just a validation of what was going to validate it. Spectroscopy will shine, I think was her phrase. That's what's going to validate it. The most important part, yeah, she just completely skipped over any validation that she could be doing. It will just shine, which is a very odd non-scientific terminology. It's a little bit wishy-washy, sleight of handing. It will just shine. It'll just, and the magic will happen and prove everything we want.
Well, spectroscopy is a science. So if spectroscopy gets involved, we've got proof at the end, Adam. So it will shine. It's spectroscopy.
It's like saying that if we find in this meteorite the materials to make ink and paper, that means that people are writing books in Narnia.
They've got so many hypotheses for things that it'll mean already. They've only got to get one result and they'll be so happy that when so much acid dissolves that much rock, that one of those multitude of nonsensical just so stories that they're presenting as the hypotheses for once they've dropped acid on one of them, they will, of course, they'll reject a couple, in the interest of, you know, empiricism. But one of them will give them great new understandings, won't it? And confirm what they've been thinking all along.
Yeah, and they can babble on about the confirmation within the hypothesis as opposed to covering whether or not the rock of unknown origin actually came from a sky vacuum with machinery that's been presumably made by the greatest of the engineers we have that are paid the highest possible salaries to be given to a third party to send into the sky vacuum, wink, wink. Shout out to Crockett, who says, hey, y'all. Thank you for the super chat. My bad, I've just got to cue the video.
Now, if you're a long-term subscriber of this channel, you will have heard me talk about this idea before, because we don't know where Earth got its water from. There's something in astrophysics called the snow line. Essentially, it's the distance from a star beyond which the temperature...
Why is she going into this? We've got no idea. Now am I just so story I've made up? Would you not feel reasonable as an audience member if I say to you, I really have no idea what the cause of entropy is. I don't know. However, if I tell you a little story about Xenu, yeah, you know Xenu, you've heard of him from Scientology, how he started an essentially nuclear reactor at the start of the known existence, and that set in motion what we describe as the arrow of time. Now, if I were to offer you up that story and say that if and only if I can get hold of some Turkish delight from Narnia, which was around about, you know, in terms of history and timeline and crossing over of worlds, a similar sort of timeline to Xenu's timeline, then I can test the Turkish delights and confirm whether or not they've got a certain amount of amino acids in them. And if they have, then that will essentially confirm my timeline for Xenu starting the arrow of time with his nuclear reactor. So I'm very excited. I've written all this down. I've called it a hypothesis. I'm a scientist. And get this, this is the icing on the cake. We're going to get spectroscopy involved. It's going to shine. Xenu's going to have confirmed to have started the arrow of time. It's all very exciting times. Now, if I offered you that as a story, in lieu and now forgetting all about, because there's enough distance between me saying we genuinely don't know what started entropy, beyond looking at the ontological primitives, I'll add that in case somebody pulls me on it. Would the story suffice? I mean, would that be enough? I mean, I know I've just told you I don't know, but I did offer a pretty good story. Would you all agree?
Yes, awesome story.
Their story concerning what things are out in their sky vacuum all begins and ends with spectroscopy, because it all begins and ends with what they claim the composition of their sun is. Everything starts there. That was their starting point. And they just built from that. Every star is a derivative of our own solar system star, the sun. And it all started and ends. It all starts and ends right there.
Indeedy.
It was It was the original spectroscopers that were claimed to tell everyone what the sun was. You know that, don't you?
Yeah.
Did I tell you that before?
Yes, we're aware.
They told everyone the sun was yellow helium. That's why it's called Helios. Plasma, right? And it has hydrogen plasma now as well, supposedly. But yellow helium plasma, there is no such thing.
No.
The only place it exists.
No such thing.
The only place.
You're saying there's no such thing. This is where spectroscopy really does shine.
But see, the only place where yellow helium plasma exists is on their sun in their sky vacuum. In reality, no such thing as yellow helium plasma exists.
However, there is a hypothesis out there, Brian, I don't know if you're aware of this, that says if we can get hold of... I mean, I am currently campaigning to get hold of some of the OSIRIS-REx sky vacuum soil because, believe it or not, if I can get hold of some of that and dissolve it in, not acid, but some different solvent, I'm pretty sure that I can actually confirm the helium content of the sun. So, you know, based on that, I've put up a petition. I've asked people to smash the super chat. I've asked people to support me on PayPal. And if I can just raise a couple of billion, we can petition to get at least 3 micrograms of that soil. So are you with me?
Nathan, the scary thing is people believe this. This is crazy.
How did they measure this?
With a very, very precise scale.
It doesn't matter. Don't you know it does not matter how they measured it? Whatever she says, people are they're gonna lap it up.
Well, I've just looked it up.
Well,
it was a scientific scale they used.
It's a reference frame, right, John?
Yes. It's a reference to something. What are they referencing when they measure
I'm going to have
this?
to close this window. There's something going past. Hold on. You're going to need a flat earth for that.
I'm sure they leveled their instrument and aimed it at the sun, you know.
Leveled?
To get it precise.
Leveled their instrument?
No, they couldn't. Never mind. They probably... You can't do that on a sphere. Never mind.
You can't do that on a sphere. Like I was explaining earlier when we were going through it with Becky, you know, detailing orbital motions, these models that have been, you know, commissioned by the church in essence to let them know when Easter's going to be, more accurately. They're not capable of working out how our world works. It's absurd. It's like saying I'm going to go into The Sims on my PC and see if I can figure out how entropy works in the real world. It's just like, what are you doing? No, don't reify your models and tell us that we're actually getting stuff from the orbital motion that's described by Kepler. What are you doing, love? No, we're not actually on a ball. You know, Kepler's got all of those extrapolations from a flat plane is measured. How can we be falling around a ball? Yeah, you just don't comprehend how these models work. How sad.
No, it's actually not true. Kepler got all of his information from astrology, something they would call woo-woo. You know what I mean? They would call that woo-woo. It's so bad that astrology has to call itself pseudoscience, so it's not trying to claim to be science like astronomy. But that's where everything that Kepler knew, and Brahe also, and Galileo, it all comes from astrology. Because that's how they learned astronomy, was through that.
But all it is,
so everything from
astrology means is the logic of the stars. That's what it means. All astronomy means is naming stars, giving them names, giving them stories. But they want to, as Brian's just pointed out, call astrologic, if you want to extrapolate it out a little bit, not quite accurate, but they want to call it pseudoscience, and they've painted it as such when they give you the stars, as in the newspaper with your star sign and what's going to happen when you meet a tall, dark stranger tomorrow. Well, that's how they've turned figuring out the patterns of the stars, because it's pretty basic astrology, actually, when you break down what it actually is, versus what it's been used for. Well, what it's been used for by the people who developed heliocentrism was knowing where the patterns of the stars would lay. Very useful if you're going to talk about orbits based on flat plane measurements of those stars that were derived from the people who were measuring their logic, tracking their patterns. But that's all they were doing. Well, if that's what people understood this to be, they'd go, hold on, so you mean how the stars just function is dealt with by astrology? Yeah, isn't that obvious? What you hear is some witch with a crystal ball talking about it, and suddenly it's woo-woo. Carry on, Brian.
No, but that's it. I mean, the very thing they would laugh at and call woo-woo is the origin of all their BS. It all began and ended there. But when one of them speaks about Kepler, they won't speak about his astrological charts that he was famous for. They won't speak about any of that. They'll only speak about him being an astronomer. The same with Brahe and Galileo and others. They won't speak about that because it's a source of embarrassment for them. You know, we don't. You know, it's stupid, but that's the truth.
Temperature is low enough that you start to get ice forming. So that could be water ice, but it could also be methane ice or ammonia ice, for example. And what that means is that if you're then forming planets out at that distance a long way from the star, then you've got...
You're going to need a whole bunch of conceptual gravitational accretion concepts in order to describe this nonsensical model-based reification out in a sky vacuum that you think you've got this soil from, Becky. I mean, you're currently in total la la land as far as I'm concerned.
Bits of rock that start to come together, but you've also
No, bits of rock are coming from sky vacuums.
got bits of ice in the mix as well that can go into forming those planets. But
Go to Hawaii. Watch how the world produces surface level materials. You can see it being pumped out of the ground. Literally. Yeah? That's how islands get developed. That's how the world is growing, if you want to see it in that way. Now, that's something I can physically reference and show you. You can go to yourself and watch happen. Meanwhile, just taken on Becky's, it definitely did impact the ground. You've got nothing to actually verify in this regard from Becky. Nothing. And all you've got at the end of it is a story, an origin story, for their evolution and heliocentrism, which is a model-based reification. She's talking within the reification currently, so she's just in La La Land.
Closer into the star, inside the snow line.
Closer? What, based on Huygens' assumptions that gave you the scale to tell us how close or far we are? Bearing in mind that that scale has changed multiple times. So, but just at this particular point, we know how close or far. No, it's your total La La Land, love.
The ice will just vaporize and you will form a planet with no water. Now, the snow line in the solar system is currently 5 times the Earth-Sun distance. Now,
really? The sun distance has been an extrapolation that's taken from our base measurements of either a derivation of a Al-Biruni measurement of dip or elevation angle measurements to Polaris. Okay, those are both flat plane requirements and do not in any way infer that we've got an Earth that can give you a snow line. Because that would put Earth as a reification, as a ball in a sky vacuum, floating around in an orbital description given to you by Kepler, at a scale given to you by Huygens. Utterly absurd La La Land nonsense, Becky. This graph means nothing.
I was a bit closer in the past because there was a lot more dust surrounding the sun while the planets were...
Was there? Yeah, you look really, really confident about that bullshit. While you nod and snarl and tell us about how much more dust there was in the past. Because you went back there, didn't you, and checked and validated this. With science and spectroscopy, because that's also time travel, isn't it? When spectroscopy looks at stuff, it's basically looking at the past.
Still forming, which cooled things down a little bit. And so that brought the snow line to 2.7-ish times the Earth-Sun distance, which is around...
Which is made up by Huygens and Kepler.
Around about the asteroid belt.
Round about the asteroid belt? What asteroid belt? What, based on Huygens and Kepler and what they have derived in orbital motions in a model to best tell when Easter's going to be? You think that that puts a distance that you can describe a snow line with in this model? We don't live in this model. This is not the world, Becky.
Area. So as far as we know, we think that...
As far as you know, you don't know anything. You've just made every last thing you've just said up.
While Earth was forming, there was...
You don't know any of that.
No water in this part of the solar system.
There is no solar system. Kepler and Huygens' orbital-based models aren't where we live.
For Earth to get its water...
No. That's fantastic proof. See, they know that at this part of the solar system, there is no water because they don't see space snow. It's good logic.
There you go. When you say they don't see it, they're looking at the sky and looking at twinkling lights. But they're describing those twinkling lights in Kepler and Huygens' orbital motions. They're not in orbital motions. We're not falling around the sun in a solar system, which is all she's babbled on. It's just descriptions of the solar system. We are not falling around the sun.
If you believe all that, then you can get proof that there's no water on the asteroid belt because there isn't space snow.
At the distance she's ascribed, and there should be...
the snow line.
According to her, there should be snow at that line. Well, no. The scale's from Huygens.
Well, she's got 4.7-ish% science for that.
4.7-ish% science.
To have been brought by asteroids and comets.
No, they haven't, Becky. You're going to validate. That's all I care about in this video. Prove this came from a rock in a sky vacuum. That's it. You can't. First, you'd need to demonstrate that we could be breathing for the sky to be a vacuum to go and get a rock from. You'll never do that because it's a second law of thermodynamics violation. If the sky was a vacuum for these rocks to come from, meaning that you've sent out an projectile of some description with a mechanical arm to scoop up stuff from rocks in sky vacuums, and it can leave the ground and go out into that area, then so can all the gas we're breathing. The high pressure gas needs to press on something. And if there's nothing but an empty area of volume above our heads in the sky, then that's where all the gas would go, as it expands in all directions in line with entropic law. That's laws of nature. How stuff always occurs. Gas always fills space. So the gas we're breathing at pressure would always fill space, Becky? So you're not going to be sending out rockets to go and scoop up this soil of unknown origin you're now telling us all about how it's come from space.
From beyond the snow line at the edge of the solar system.
Before you go, Nath.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think there might be a super chat for you.
Indeed, from Effie Patriot. Wow, 100 Canadian dollars. Thank you very much indeed. Becky wants everyone to worship the ancient Greek sun god, Helios, the mythical temple of heliocentrism. Indeed, Helios, the heliocentric model, sun at centre, earth tilted towards it. Yeah, we don't live in a model. Thank you so much for the super chat, Effie Patriot. Thank you, Adam.
To the inner solar system and then impact with the Earth, and then the ice melts and you start to form oceans on Earth. Now, to test that hypothesis, what you can do is compare the ratio of normal hydrogen to its isotope, heavy hydrogen, aka deuterium. And you can...
Like, drawing a comparison is not a hypothesis. You can draw this comparison. So, is there an effect we're studying by any chance? Because a hypothesis is a supposition of your presumed cause of an effect. You're making comparisons of things, Becky, and calling it a hypothesis. You're getting this, ladies and gentlemen. You're getting this is how you have been swindled, defrauded. Go ahead.
Sorry for interrupting you. It's just like, what is actually happening? Like, what's the thing that's happening that's going to make it a hypothesis?
Nothing. They're making a comparison.
She's telling us how they make oceans.
Nothing. They're
She's
comparing.
telling us how God made the oceans.
That's what
she's presupposing how it all came to. Hold on, she's presupposing how it all came to be. Then, basically, and that's it.
Yes, after making a comparison. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, sorry. No, she's not telling you how it happens. She isn't telling you how it happens. She's not telling you how hydrogen is formed. That's what she's not telling you. Because she doesn't have a clue how hydrogen is formed. None of them do.
No, I've got a story, though. No, that's part of the rhetoric, isn't it? It's formed in the heart of dying stars like everything else.
No, there's not. They can't show how hydrogen is formed in our world. Never mind their outer world, their fantasy. They can't show. They know if you look into it, it's a circle joke. They can't show you how hydrogen is formed. They can show oxygen, but they can't show hydrogen.
What?
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, it's a circle joke.
I didn't know that.
It's a circle joke. When it comes to hydrogen, if you look into it, they literally bring you around in a circle as many times as possible till you get tired. They can never actually show you how hydrogen gets formed.
Okay, I didn't know that.
You can compare that ratio
and
in
they
the
can't show you how
hydrogen.
water gets formed either.
What?
They can only show.
Well, that's why that's part of the. I did know that.
Hydrogen gets formed.
The water bit. That's why I do know. That's why it was heavily focused on. Glad you brought that up. Right. That's why it's part of this story. That I did know.
Yeah.
Yes, they can describe the cycle. Okay. Well, that's a cycle. Where did it come from? Oh, well, it came from beyond the snow line. So long as we're in that period, in that section of the Goldilocks zone, then liquid water will exist. That's part of their rhetoric. That I did know. I didn't know the hydrogen bit, though. That's fascinating. I'll ask you about that in the after show, Brian.
But I don't get this. Like, what's the issue? Like, we don't know how the atoms came to be? Well, yes, that's a reasonable statement to make, right? We know how atoms combine to make molecules, but that's it.
No, Arwin, it's an origin story. So that's a problem for them because it's an origin story. So for water, well, we've got to figure out where it would be developed, where it would be produced and be allowable to be in our nice, warm Goldilocks zone and be it liquid so we can have life. Well, they've got to figure that out. They don't know, do they? But it's an origin story.
I'm sorry, man. So it's an ontological primitive issue that they're getting hung up on.
Correct. I dropped that in earlier as well when I was explaining it from the context of their position to say, well, yes, you do have an answer. It's the ontological primitives. They just never want to get there. They just want to invent ad hoc, just so stories for creations of things. In this case, water, but also hydrogen, as I've just found out.
Yeah, but it's going to be... This is the pure correlation she's about to cite now.
Yep.
That makes up water, H2O, in the asteroid sample from Bennu compared to on Earth. If this deuterium over hydrogen ratio, or D over H, is the same for both the sample from Bennu and on Earth, then you've got a lot more evidence to support the...
Doesn't that sound like something that would have to fall in line with entropic law, Adam?
Sounds like correlation.
Yeah, but the correlation with entropic law, something that's being defied in the area that they're claiming to gather the soil from.
Yeah, but if you do something in a box, then that means that that also has to have happened somehow in some way in the total reality, right?
They'll draw that correlation, as Adam keeps saying, yeah.
The idea that the water on Earth comes from the same place as any water ice on Bennu.
There you go. The perfect summary. Thank you, Becky. Right on time.
Far reaches of the solar system
We don't live
beyond
in a solar system. It's a Kepler-based model. Reification fallacy, Becky.
the snow line, from which
reaches.
point Bennu
far
migrated
reaches.
inwards to become a near-Earth.
HelloFresh is the...
Okay, they're probably 2/3 of the way through this video. We'll keep going a little bit. We're a little bit over on... I'll try and keep these live shows to an hour, but we've been doing them longer and longer recently.
Question of whether Bennu is a rubble pile. And the reason that this is...
Yeah, that's the main question. Do you get soil from space? Space being a second law of thermodynamics violation, sky vacuum. So, to put it more succinctly, do you get sky soil? No, you don't. That's the main question.
Did she say,
Nathan,
did she
after
say
Neil.
Barney Rubble?
No, she didn't say Barney Rubble.
He may as well have.
Well, you need a Flintstone for that. Anyway, I got to get going, but I just want to say the far reaches of space and all this second law of thermodynamics violation about outer space, the only way they keep that alive in people's mind is to say that this spacecraft skimmed off an asteroid, got some grams of dirt, brought it, deposited via a capsule, is on its way to another asteroid to do another smash and grab. And so everyone's focused on this thing that landed supposedly from out there and these grams. And the whole thing is giving credence to a solar system outer space, which is a violation of second law of thermodynamics. Can't have a vacuum next to gas pressure and say you have outer space the way they do.
I'll wait till Nathan comes back when he's here.
I caught the tail end of it. It just reminds me of that part in the book of Job when God's telling him, "Where were you when I created the oceans?" And he goes through a list of things. Where were you when I created the frost? Just people trying to just make up stories about things they know nothing about.
I was beyond the snow line.
Well, the hydrogen thing, if you look into what they claim concerning the heliocentric model, they claim that hydrogen, you'll have to excuse me a little bit of food now, they claim that hydrogen is the most abundant element in the known universe, right? Now, they haven't defined the universe, just you know what they mean when they throw that out there. And the reason they say that, part of the reason they say that, is not just that it's such a big part of the creation of the stars, right? Is that water vapor contains hydrogen. That is then broken up via sunlight, right? So it's broken up, the oxygen and hydrogen is broken apart. And they talk about the oxygen because they bring it into the story of the ozone layer. And they talk about an ozone layer at 22 miles up that doesn't exist. It's not there. Right? If you look into that's a sidebar, but if you look into it, like what they're claiming, the official figures means it's anything but a layer, right? But
are you saying that trioxide doesn't like lump up as a layer?
Yeah, they're trying to say that there's this ozone created, and there's so little ozone in a place that there's so little layer in general. So there's so little ozone in a place where there's so little gas. You know what I mean? It would be absolutely impossible to even refer to it as a sprinkle, never mind a layer, let's just say, right? But that's a sidebar.
Is it even forming there, though? You know, I think it's completely fictional. I don't think that ozone is moving up there because it should be a lot heavier. It should be more dense than what is out there.
It doesn't matter. But it doesn't matter if it is or isn't. The amount that they have to, the only amount that they can claim. This is from NASA. This is not just any randoms. This is NASA, right? The only amount that they can claim, right, is such a tiny amount you couldn't even call it a light sprinkling. Never mind a layer. But anyway, never mind that side of it. It's the hydrogen side. So people focus on the oxygen side, right? Ozone, just like we just did there a minute ago. But it's the hydrogen side. They have to claim that all that hydrogen just disappears out into heliocentric outer space. Because they don't know what happens to it. They have no explanation of what happens to it. And they don't know, hang on, I'm not finished. They don't know, right? Then because they don't have any way to get that to come back to the surface of Earth, they don't know what happens to it. They don't know how it could be back on the surface of Earth, like the hydrogen cycle. Check out the hydrogen cycle. What a circle jerk. They have no idea how it's formed in the oceans. They have no idea how it's formed. They just throw a molecular model description at you and walk off. They have no idea where the hydrogen comes from.
I don't know where you're getting this, but I'm pretty sure that they do claim it comes out of the soil. And that is literally also provable, right? The super deep borehole, what came bubbling out of that mud? Hydrogen gas.
Yeah, but the creation of the hydrogen
come out of the ground. They do know that, and they think it just kind of goes off in space, and it like goes with that surplus, right? And then it's like, oh, it's a little bit too much now. The gravity can't hold it, and then just a little puff goes off into space. That's what they actually claim, how it happens.
Yeah, I looked into what they claim. They have no idea. There's no point in saying hydrogen and moving on. They can't tell you how it forms. The point is that in the real world, right, what you're missing is that they have no idea what happens to the hydrogen. They have no idea.
Stop talking over each other. Stop both of you. Stop a second. Stop a second.
It's impossible, Nathan.
Stop a
It's
second.
absolutely impossible.
You keep saying
hello? Can you hear me?
Know.
Can you hear me? Does that mean just carry on indefinitely? Just let each other get to the end of the statement and wait for a pause. And the other one, be concise, be respectful of the other one, and stop talking when you're finished. Because otherwise, it's just unlistenable.
They must claim that all the hydrogen that comes apart from the oxygen through sunlight breaking up a water vapor, they must claim that all disappears out into heliocentric space, right? But they focus on the oxygen side. They don't focus on the hydrogen side. They can tell you how oxygen is formed via seaweed and different things, right? Photoplankton in the ocean and different things. But when it comes to hydrogen, they can only claim it's there. They can't tell you how it's formed. In reality, whatever's happening to the hydrogen, it's not going out into a sky vacuum. You understand? It's not going into a sky vacuum because there isn't a sky vacuum. So what's happening to the hydrogen and how is it being, like, they can't tell you how it's being reformed here. They can just tell you it's here magically. They can't tell you how it's being reformed. Whereas in reality, it's not going into a sky vacuum. So it's an absolute mystery.
Are you done?
Almost. I was just almost there, Arwen, and you jumped straight in at the end of it. Do I have to start the whole thing again? Do I need to start the whole thing again to get to the point?
Yeah, why didn't you start it all over again so I have to wait another 5 minutes to tell you you are dead wrong, Ryan.
You tell us all about it,
Yeah, you're dead wrong, Ryan.
No, I'm going to go on mute, and you're going to tell us about all the hydrogen that comes from the ground without telling us how it's formed. Let's see.
Nobody's asking
Let's see
how
if
it
you
is
can prove
formed. Nobody's
how hydrogen
asking
is
as to
formed.
the origin
Let's see
of
if you can do that.
material.
Off you
You're
go.
not even discussing it. You're just saying, where does it go? Where is it coming from? Well, it
No,
does
I'm
come
not.
out of the
No, I'm
soil,
not.
and it
No, I'm not.
dissolves into
Please.
liquids and other things.
No, I'm
Yeah?
not.
It doesn't just
No, I'm
go
not, Alvin.
straight
That's not
up
what I'm
and get
saying.
the
You
hell
didn't
out of the
listen because you
atmosphere.
think you know.
Thanks for giving me the space. Yeah?
Yeah. Just because you
because
you
you're
didn't
dead
listen. You didn't
wrong,
listen.
Brian.
You didn't listen. You couldn't wait to jump in at the end of it. That's your problem.
Yeah,
Your
I
ego
didn't
was the
listen.
problem.
I heard you out
So
for
you
like
think
10
you know
fucking
where
minutes.
hydrogen comes
You're
from, and if you
talking
listen,
over
you'd realise
half
that
of what I'm
nobody knows.
saying here, you
Literally,
corruptible
this is just
asshole.
unlistenable. I just can't hear anything either of you say as you shout at each other through each other.
Yeah, could you tell Brian to maybe not talk over me? As I let him
Arwin,
finish for 10 minutes?
Arwin, you're interrupting me. Now bloody Neil's joining in. No, I told you, wait till the end until there's a really specific pause. You didn't. You talked over his conclusion. He got a narky with you. I told both of you. You interrupted and now you're moaning.
Okay, well then, whatever, man. You go have your own conversations then.
You've just said it's not about the origins when that's specifically what Brian's talking about. And Brian's saying, well, you're just not listening. Well, he's right. But just try stop talking past each other. Listen. Because if you're like, is it my turn to talk yet? Yeah, that's you waiting for your turn to talk rather than actually listening to what he says.
Yeah, well, he's just saying the same thing over and over and over again, like 4 frickin' times. When I do that, Nathan, you tell me, yeah,
Okay,
we
chill
heard
out.
you already, yeah? Where were you when Brian was saying the same thing 4 times over and over again? You told me to shut up.
I'm listening to him. I'm listening to him.
Why are you always appealing to Nathan anyway?
Because I'm the host.
Because
Neil.
I
What
don't
do you
like
think?
being treated asymmetrically. That's why.
Who else is he going to appeal to, Neil? It's my show.
If anything, you get treated with favoritism.
Arwin does, yeah. Because
I
he's
don't
my
see what the
favourite.
problem is.
Yeah, we all know.
Yeah, I don't see what the problem is. I was just trying to lay out some information for people, and Arwin, you just made it impossible to do that. You decided to turn it into an egotistical argument.
Well, why did you repeat the same thing like 4 times over then?
I didn't repeat the same thing 4 times. You didn't listen to it.
Yeah, I did. The origin. I can tell you the freaking origin. I wanted to tell you the
Okay,
freaking
then
origin.
tell me
but
what
no,
I said
have
then.
to shut up.
Okay,
I have
if
to
I said
shut
it
up.
4 times, you will be able to repeat it then. Off you go.
Yeah, so you know how hydrogen is also formed? Through radiation, yeah?
Sorry,
It's literally
you
like
please
one material.
radiate.
Oh, see,
Hold on, Brian.
Nathan?
Hold on, Brian. Brian, give him a break.
No,
Come
what
on.
I asked you.
Hold on, Brian. Just give him a break. Let him get to the end. Come on. Go ahead, Arwin.
See what I mean? The favoritism again.
No, don't need the colour commentary.
Jesus Christ,
It
Neil,
is.
what the fuck are you even doing here, you wanker?
No need. Just carry on, Arwin.
Yeah, hydrogen can actually be created. Yeah? Like non-chemical. See, I'm done here, dude. You can have your own show, man. I'm not being part of this anymore.
I'm interrupting. Oh, no, I'm not. Damn.
Go ahead, Neil. I hope it was worth it.
What do you mean? Why are you not telling him? He said, what am I doing here, you wanker? Well, obviously, I'm here to get under his skin. He started interrupting Brian right from the freaking beginning. And if you can't see that, Nathan, you're blinded.
I can see it, but as is my favourite, I'm just going to ignore it, Neil. It's only the reasonable way to do things.
Not fucking funny, Nathan.
They're saying you're my favourite. I'm making light of it. What do you want?
Well, how about get a little sterner when people pile on to rumpus me? How about that?
You were both doing it equally.
Brian.
You were both doing it equally.
Yeah.
You're both doing
What's
it.
wrong with having favourites? Neil's got his favourite. Look, Brian. As soon as Brian overtaught you, Neil came in and white knighted for the
No, because I asked the question.
Meanwhile, this isn't really helping. Neil, thank you, Neil. Thank you.
He started talking as soon as Brian started talking.
Okay,
Holy shit, Adam.
everyone stop for a second, please. Can you all stop? Number one, can you all, if you're going to be yelling, at least back off your mics, Arwin and Neil, so we don't have to listen to the clipping? Thank you. Secondly, this doesn't really help in terms of the discussion. The point so far, because I've listened, is that Brian is suggesting they have no idea how it's created. They do describe cycles. Arwin's saying, well, it comes out of the ground, which tends to suggest, no offence, Arwin, that you're not really listening because you said it's not about how it's created. That was your last statement before it descended into chaos.
Well, it is created. It literally, where there was no hydrogen before, hydrogen can come into existence right there.
Exactly, Arwin. They don't know how that happens.
See, Nathan, I just can't roll out anything here without somebody
okay, stop.
talking.
Okay, you appealed to me. The reason he's stepping on you there is because he's saying, yeah, that's my point. They don't know how that process occurs. That's why he's stepping on you.
Well, they do, but I can't get that out because he talks over me halfway for me trying to get that out.
Okay. So, so that you can continue, I can obviously give a slightly less enraged summary. Brian's saying they haven't got the foggiest how that occurs, and you're saying they do. So go ahead. That was where we were at when Brian stepped in and did exactly what I've just done. So he's saying, okay, go on then, Arwin. Off you go. Please don't interrupt me, Brian.
Nuclear splitting. It happens in the Earth from radioactivity, which is also in the Earth in all kinds of ways. Literally, hydrogen forms out of other molecules where there wasn't any before. That happens. That literally happens also in concentrated form in nuclear reactors. It just creates hydrogen gas. That's even a risk that, that makes things blow up if it's not like vented properly, right? Hydrogen gas, not stored in a tank and then released. No, it literally forms where before there was no hydrogen gas. And that happens naturally, not just stuff.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah, but he's talking about it turning up. He's not giving anything about how it's actually formed. He's just saying the normal mainstream rhetoric of this and that happens and suddenly hydrogen. No, there's a load of hydrogen that's broken apart from oxygen, right? With the photo dissociation, right, is the term for sunlight breaking up water vapor. They have no idea what happens to that hydrogen, and they have no idea how more hydrogen is formed in the ocean. They don't have a clue. What you're talking about is hydrogen just suddenly poofing into existence. That's the point. They don't know how hydrogen is formed, and they don't know. If you search the hydrogen cycle, you'll find nothing. Nothing. Nothing, because they claim it goes off out into outer space. But there has to be a cycle somehow, because hydrogen is not disappearing and then poofing back into existence. Unless it is, I don't know. The point is they don't know how this is happening.
I don't know where you're getting
Okay, we got that, Brian. We got that, Brian.
Where are you getting this? They do know. There is a hydrogen cycle. Hydrogen dissolves. Hydrogen dissolves in all kinds of things. Liquids.
Right, so the hydrogen up in the sky, what happens to that?
Up there. They
so the
do
hydrogen in the sky.
Brian,
they do
please,
know about
Brian.
it, and you keep rumpusing me.
Yeah, I'm trying to tell him off. Please don't, Brian.
I'm rumpusing him. Hang on a minute. No, Nathan, this is not an attack on you. Hang on a minute, though. Right? I'm rumpusing him. Neil asked me a question, and I was trying to talk to Neil and tell him, give him information. And Alan decided to jump in, right? And they was telling me they do know. Well, go off then and prove it, Arwen. Go and prove how the formation of hydrogen happens. Show us the hydrogen cycle, Arwen.
I can help you with the formation of hydrogen.
Yeah, I guessed.
Right, Arwen's right. Whenever they run a nuclear reactor, one of the byproducts of the nuclear fuel rods reacting with the water is hydrogen gas.
But it's already contained in the water. Hold on. But there's already an abundance of hydrogen there for it to liberate, is there not?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that I don't think it's what Brian is saying, unless I'm very much mistaken.
Yeah, exactly, Nathan. This is the problem. I mean, when I looked into it, it seems like there's a load there, but then when you look into it, They just bring you around in a circle. They don't give you anything.
Well, let's see if that is. Let's see if that's the case, Brian. Let's see if that's the case, because Arwin's got his Google scroll result. Let's see what it says. Arwin, what were you highlighting? Feel free.
All right, I just did a rudimentary Google search, and there's a direct result saying the hydrogen cycle, i.e. production of hydrogen from water by renewable energy storage and use of hydrogen in full fuel cells, combustion engines, or turbines is a closed cycle. Electrolysis splits water into hydrogen and oxygen and represents a mature technology in the power range. Okay, this seems not very physics-oriented and more industrial-oriented.
It also doesn't answer... Hold on. It doesn't answer Brian's question either, though. So, in the same way, you've got a situation where they're describing the liberation of hydrogen from a source. In the same way, Arwin, by analogy, if I say, you don't know where ham comes from, and I go, do? Comes from ham sandwiches. You go, no, you don't know what the original source of the ham is. You go, do, look, in the sandwich shop, if I split up all of the ham sandwiches, I'm left with loads and loads of ham. So that's the source of ham. No, it's not the origin of the ham, though. It is, look, it's liberated from the sandwiches when I split them. That's what's happening here.
Okay, I found a hydrogen cycle on Wikipedia here, but that seems to be more about in the ground. So there is a hydrogen cycle in the ground, apparently. That I could confirm. There is interaction between material. Hydrogen sometimes does go bubbling up, right? Just like at the Cola Deep borehole. But I mean, yeah, there is no full picture with the water cycle, it seems.
That's what Brian's saying. You've just spent 20 minutes arguing against him on this. Bloody hell, Arwin. That was not subtle.
Yeah, you confirmed this point.
That's my point. All I can tell you is about the hydrological cycle, which is also known as the water cycle. Right? That's the only cycle they'll give you. Either they don't know or they're not saying. I have no idea. But I looked and I could not find anything. You could spend 3 days going around in a circle and get back to where you started.
I get your point now. A search result did deliver. It just didn't really give you the fine details. It didn't give you a cycle like the water cycle. So that's a bit surprising. Yes, it should be there though. I mean, why not?
Does he get an apology or what? Hold on. Hold on. We spent 20 minutes on it. Normally, I'd just focus on the issue as it's now been resolved, and we've all been educated as a result. Thank you, John. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Arwin. However, surely you owe him a bit of an apology, Arwin. Come on.
Oh, not really, because I didn't. This specific, the cycle, yeah, apparently it isn't. But they do know how it is made. They do know how it forms, where it comes from.
Wow.
Right? Wow. They don't have a cycle.
Wow. Total weasel.
Yeah, all those things were looked up, and John did confirm it. Yeah?
No, he did not.
John did confirm what I said.
No.
He confirmed what Brian said, that take in a circle jerk.
He took
That's what he said in the beginning.
Yeah, it does. It does. Absolutely. I was going to say that, Neil. Actually, it's almost like it takes you around in circles. Yeah, precisely. That was the point. And to be fair to Brian, his criticism of you in that back and forth while you were getting very angry and clipping your mics was that you weren't really listening. Now that point you've just conceded, and that was Brian's gripe and what you were arguing about. So surely, rather than being weasel and saying, "Well, no, I was right. It's liberated from sources that obviously contain hydrogen like water." That really isn't Brian's point, and now you do know what it is and agree. Surely you should apologise for being so rude.
Okay, well, I'm sorry for being so rude. Next time, please don't rumpus half of what I'm saying. Every single time I speak up.
Fair enough, but both you stop. Sometimes there's going to be a legitimate reason to step on someone. If it's no, the point you're on now that I'm stepping over is where I've got to draw a line so that you understand that is the point. So yeah, that is going to happen sometimes, and it is sometimes justifiable for Brian this time.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I accept your apology, Arwin.
Good. Can you now kiss on camera?
Fine. So there's no hydrogen cycle established out there. That's odd. I think there would be one. They do, however, know where hydrogen comes out of the ground and how it's created. That's what I thought.
But they don't. They only know that it comes
That's
out
what
of the
I
ground.
thought that you were talking about, but apparently you were really actually talking about a complete cycle. That doesn't seem to be out there. If that is specifically what you were talking about, then I agree with you. Apparently it does.
No, I'm speaking even more specific than that. Excuse me. The actual creation of it to begin with. This is the point. They can say it comes out of the ground. They can photo dissociation, like with radiation and stuff as well in power plants. It'll separate the hydrogen from the oxygen, blah, blah, blah. But they can't tell you where the hydrogen formed. They can't tell you how that formed. And all they can tell you is all the hydrogen that's broken apart from water vapor just goes off into outer space. That's what they'll tell you. They have either they don't know, like that, because the cycle is the second part. The formation will be the first part. So what I mean is that if it's a cycle, then they don't know the formation, but they either don't know the cycle, or they're not looking for a cycle because they believe it's going out into outer space, or they do know the cycle and not telling anyone about it.
Yes.
But they still can't tell you how it's formed. They don't.
Hold on. It's not just formed from water. Hydrogen doesn't only come out of water. That was my point. It also can be created out of other materials through radioactivity. So it seems it's not just the water that's being transformed.
Stop. I just don't like this, Arwin. This isn't you. Rephrasing how you've now carefully paraphrased in how your point could have been made initially and not cause a massive argument with Brian isn't the original point you were making at all. So just please don't be Weasley. Yeah, now you can rephrase it accurately and not get Brian shouting at you or stepping on you. But don't try and make out that was what you were originally saying, because it certainly wasn't.
Well, I thought originally he was just making a claim that, we don't know where it's coming from.
Because you weren't listening to him.
He didn't mean that. He was actually talking about the cycle and something specifically about an ontological primitive. Well, of course, the ontological primitive, they're always going to get stuck on that, right? It was originally manifested by the designer. That is very blatantly obvious. But there is technically some sort of cycle with hydrogen, but it's not really cataloged as much as it is as the hydro cycle. So, yeah.
Yeah, but that's my point, Arwin. They'll only give you the hydrological cycle, and they can't tell you where the hydrogen is formed from. This is the thing.
So before you say it all again.
Yeah.
However, now Arwin's back on fire. So yes, and he's taken it right to the conclusion, which is excellent, because we're now going to get to do that. Which is to say, yes, exactly, Arwin. That's the purpose. Because they have no answer to the ontological primitives, and they have to have stuff being made. They have to have an origin story for water and hydrogen, everything in the known existing universe, including every single material aspect of you being a living organism. All of that has got to be created by nature, hasn't it? So all of this is a journey into the nature creating it all. Well, it didn't. But that's what this story ultimately is about, and Brian's highlighting of their lack of explanation in this regard alludes to Arwin's now excellent and concise summary of why it's being done, because it all leads to the ontological primitives. What is their origin story? Well, nature created it all. So coming up with graphs for where nature has the right parameters to make it all, in a great big convoluted nonsense story of rocks coming from sky vacuums, is how they convince you that basically nature created everything. Yes, Arwin, you've redeemed yourself.
But don't they make an excuse that the molten iron core and its radioactive materials that are also supposedly there are basically creating some of this hydrogen from the start?
Maybe, but it's part of the same just so story way of having an origin for, in this case, the molten iron core. You could expand that out into Thea, with that particular origin story, which is nothing to do with Brian. We're segueing a little bit. But yeah, it's got another convoluted story of planets smashing into each other to create the molten iron core, hasn't it? Well, it's just another version of the same bullshit. But if you look into that story, it's got a load of loose ends and unexplained nonsense. Well, Brian's saying the same thing for hydrogen.
Right. It turns into a turtle cycle. It's just more turtles.
That's exactly what Brian was bloody saying. Oh, this is going to annoy me. Don't try. That's Brian's point, right? Over to you, Brian. Yes, that's Brian's point. Exactly. It's a never-ending turtle cycle.
I agree with you. Damn it, Brian. I know it's worse than that.
Actually, I think Arwin came up with this 2 weeks ago.
what people should be paying attention to is there's a chemist on the panel here, and he's not saying anything.
Kind of applies to everything, really. There's a distinction between origin and cycles. I would differentiate hydrogen in that it's so reactive, it tends to be part of many cycles. But whether it's hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, where did any of it come? Where did any of it come from? Just because it's got a cycle doesn't imply it's being made anywhere. It's being recycled, isn't it?
Well,
same stuff.
Depends on the cycle.
No.
Well, that's part of my questioning, Adam, because they have to just claim that water vapor is broken apart by sunlight, and the hydrogen just disappears off into outer space, and the oxygen becomes become potentially ozone and whatever else. But they don't have anything when you ask them, where's the hydrogen coming from? Oh, water vapor. Where's the water vapor coming from? From water? Do you know what I mean? This is the thing. They won't. It doesn't go anywhere. Is the point? It doesn't go anywhere. If it comes to the actual hydrogen itself, the hydrogen goes into the sky. How does that end up? How is that used? Because that's nothing in you. We could say that with certainty, there's absolutely nothing in our natural world that's an accident. So everything has
Not
a
a what?
purpose. Everything
Nothing in
has a
our
use.
natural world that's what?
That's an accident. Everything has a purpose and everything has a use. So when the hydrogen is broken apart, when the sunlight breaks apart water vapor and end up with hydrogen and oxygen separated, what happens to the hydrogen? They can it goes into outer space. That's it. They don't have anything other than that.
What about the menstrual
Or at
cycle?
least they're not talking about it.
What about the menstrual cycle in terms of creation? Where does that fit in?
Well, that pretty snugly. I don't know why you're asking that. You have 2 kids, don't you?
Well, I'm just trying to. Well, because Adam said no to me. Because he said no, and I said it depends on the cycle. I'm not trying to be crude. I'm just trying to link this back because we've got the ontological primitives, and we're talking about the creation of life, and we're talking about cycles. So obviously, my bee brain goes, okay, well, how do all these things link together? What one thing could link these things together? And I go, okay, well, the menstrual cycle, and then you talk about there's no such thing as accidents, and I'm like, oh, I don't think I'll drop that into this particular discussion in that context. Nevertheless, we're talking about the creation of life, aren't we? Therefore, it does directly. So I'm not just being crude like I was when I happened to mention it yesterday.
I didn't think you were.
Did you say? Are you implying you accidentally had sex with someone?
Me? I don't accidentally have sex with my wife quite frequently, actually, but that's not my point. My point is that we're talking about the creation of something. And then Adam says, well, it's not possible in terms of cycles. And I said, it depends on the cycle. And he said, no. Then my brain's gone, what cycle results in something being created?
So I would differentiate that to when we're talking about compounds as opposed to life.
No, we're not. Becky's made this clear that this is specifically about the origins of life. Specifically.
I thought I was addressing the Brian Arwin significance of hydrogen.
Yeah, but she's come off the back of these charts and graphs from Becky.
Well, where's life there? She's tried to draw a correlation between deuterium decay rates. She's tried to assume that if she finds certain amino acids, it means these things can form it. It's just nonsense.
Right, but exactly. So when you get down to the nitty gritty of what she's saying, life in her origin story is being developed from the amino acids and the pure chance of all of the right ingredients being at the right place in the Goldilocks zone, beyond the snow line, at the right time, with the right size molten iron core, with all of the origin aspects of their story intact for you to get to life, right? That's her story of the origin of life.
Well, not necessarily to life, to a primordial soup.
Which will give you life in their story. Sorry. That will give you life in their story. That's why I've linked it to this. Maybe I've been too profound.
But we need electricity, don't we? Yeah. Then we need the electricity to strike the primordial soup pond to give that, as I said earlier, that energetic input that's required, because these things, yeah. Then we went to information. as the poo-pooer of that. But in their tale, what they want is primordial soup and an energy input to do the energetically unfavorable creation of these proteins.
Right.
The thing about it is that there must be a process that's either they don't know about and can't figure out, or they're just hiding from us concerning hydrogen. I know you could say that about a lot of different things, but at least they admit to an oxygen cycle. The hydrogen cycle, you know what I mean?
No, I don't get what you're claiming.
Now, they're more recycles.
Yeah.
Matter and energy are not created or destroyed. It should be labeled recycles. Hydrogen's not being created.
Oxygen's not being created. It's being transformed to and from different intermediaries. Yeah?
Right.
Nitrogen, the same thing.
Exactly.
Carbon, the same thing.
Exactly. So this comes...
Okay.
let's just give my favourites getting some credit. Right, so when Arwen linked this back after that argument with Brian to the ontological primitives, right, you've gone one step beyond that now with the laws of nature. Well, they come obviously afterwards, but that's what this all boils down to, doesn't it? Their origin story, which results in the question at the ontological primitives, and the reality of laws of nature.
Well, my point is that there must be a recycle.
Yeah.
But what's happening to the hydrogen that's been broken apart from water vapor, with sunlight, with water vapor? What's happening to that? How is that coming back to the earth? That's what they're not talking about. That's what they're not telling you. How is that coming back to the earth? Or if it's not coming back to the earth, how is it being used? And then how is it being reformed by the earth? How is that happening?
In other words,
water.
What's
But still inhomogeneous. It still does also touch the ground, though, hydrogen. It's not only all up there.
Yeah, but what Brian's saying is...
when you're talking about water vapor.
What Brian's saying is we don't know, once it's been liberated in this case, so the examples that we've had from you so far, Arwen, show the liberation of hydrogen from something else. Okay, well, what Brian's saying is, okay, once that's been liberated or utilised in some way, how does it then, like with carbon dioxide, go back into a cyclical way of then being either absorbed by other stuff, ready to be released again in the cycle, or contained in some way, dissipated in some way? What's happening to it is what Brian's saying. And the answer, according to Brian, is, well, they and we and anybody else who's looking into it won't find the answer to that. You'll find some ad hoc, wishy-washy describing cycles under the ground of hydrogen. It's like, yeah, but we can also have your other explanations of how it's liberated. Okay, well, once we've got an abundance of hydrogen because it's been liberated, what happens next for it to go back into the state like it would be with water? How does it go from one to the next?
It does get rebound also in chemical reactions. And again, it does dissolve in liquids and it does go around because it's still part of the inhomogeneous mash of air. So it does also reach the ground level where it does get reabsorbed. But I mean, it doesn't go back into the deep earth, though.
Wait, water vapor is still H2O.
Go on, John.
That's my question. It's about the water vapor. Once that's broken up, they can give you an explanation of what the use of the oxygen is, but they say the hydrogen just goes out into a heliocentric outer space. They don't link that back to the earth.
But water vapor is still H2O. It's water.
Yeah, but no one's denying that. That's the point I'm making. I'm not denying reality. I'm talking about this part of the cycle. Just all information cuts off. Like this hydrogen is just broken away from the oxygen via sunlight through water vapor, and then what? What happens to the hydrogen? They say it goes into outer space.
Well,
because it doesn't. I mean,
it has to be used in some way.
Some of it might go. Look, I heard the story about some of it like really concentrates at the top. Even though it all does mix in, well, yeah, theoretically, some more hydrogen should be at the top as at the bottom because of the density ratios, but it's still inhomogeneous. There still should be also hydrogen down here. But their story is all about this excuse of like, when the gas builds up to a certain mass, it just like the top layer just poof goes off, and they say that's hydrogen because it's the lightest. But that's the nonsense.
Just one sec. Can you back off your mic just a couple of inches or turn it down, Arwin?
Oh, okay.
Well, I have a question about this because, Brian, when you're talking about the liberation of hydrogen when in water vapor, are you thinking that you have two atoms of oxygen go one way and then hydrogen go the other way to create water vapor? Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm talking about is when they're liberated from each other via sunlight. I think the correct term is photodissociation. If someone, as far as I know, that's a pretty correct term. The sunlight breaks up water vapor. The oxygen, a lot of the oxygen becomes ozone, right? This is part of our claim. The hydrogen goes into heliocentric outer space. Now, the point is that there's something either they don't know or they're hiding, because we know that hydrogen is not going into our heliocentric outer space. So what's really happening to it? How is it being used, and how is there more water being formed? The point is that if you try and find out, they'll only give you their story. Where is this hydrogen? Because within their story, there needs to be the formation of new hydrogen. It can't be a recycle within their story, because they just claim it goes out into outer space. So there needs to be a formation. And they can't give you a formation because it's just a recycle. But they also either don't know or won't tell us what that recycle is.
That's my point.
Right, it doesn't go back into the earth, right?
Looked it up.
Unlike with water, where
in their story, it just disappears.
Exactly. With the hydrocycle, it always goes back to the water, which goes down to earth, right? But the hydrogen doesn't do that technically. Yeah.
Listen, photodissociation is a desire to avoid being photographed or filmed. It's common for individuals who have photodissociation to fear public speaking, performing in front of an audience, or having one's picture taken by any type of camera or video camera. You sure you got the right term there, Brian?
Put in photodissociation definition physics.
I'm just joking. That was camera shyness. I just thought it'd be music.
All right. I see, because it could be used for that term could be used colloquially for some other thing.
Photodissociation.
I'm not here to make. Sorry, John.
I was going to say, so this is their layer of ozone that protects us, right? And how that was formed is where they get the idea that the hydrogen is flying off into a violation of natural law.
But see, that's the thing. I mean, the formation of ozone is O3, right? Grand. Now, there's ozone that forms. Grand, ozone is a real gas. It seems to be a natural thing. Grand, right? But it's the hydrogen. They just, that goes disappeared, right? It's like, hang on a second. That means that there has to be a reformation of that hydrogen, right, somehow. And they can't give you that reformation. If you ask about a hydrogen cycle, they'll only tell you about the hydrological cycle, which is the water cycle. But in reality, we know that's not going into a heliocentric sky vacuum. So it has to be repurposed and reformed or recycled in some way. And that's the mystery I'm talking about. Most people what they want you to do is focus on the oxygen and the ozone layer and ignore the hydrogen that they're saying is just disappearing off out into a sky vacuum. It's liberated from us, you know.
So we're losing tons of water, really, when it comes down to it.
Well, we're losing tons of hydrogen, according to them, particularly, not oxygen, because there is the oxygen cycle. And it's separated from the hydrological cycle, right? So there's oxygen, obviously, as part of the hydrological cycle, but there is a separate oxygen cycle. Whereas when it comes to hydrogen, there is no separated hydrogen cycle from the water cycle, if you understand.
Yeah.
There's something either we don't know or being hidden from us. Sorry, John.
No, I was just going to say I'd have to look into it more. I wasn't sure what you were claiming there. I was just trying to get clarity.
Yeah, I mean, QE is correct. Like, that's exactly it. There has to be a recycle. That is my exact point. There has to be a recycle of these things. I mean, it's not going away somewhere. It's not disappearing, so it has to be used. I've thought about it, and I've asked Adam some weird questions, and he didn't know why I was asking him about salt and different things over time. You know, it's like, how is this process happening? Maybe nobody knows. You know what I mean? Maybe it's that simple.
So much for an echo chamber, right?
Yeah, I disagree with that, Neil.
What's that?
I said I disagree with that, Neil.
But isn't it it's an amazing thing to me? But some things when we're just not going to know, and that's cool.
If I had to make a guess, I would bank on the sun being directly involved somehow in what happens with the hydrogen. But that's a guess. That means nothing. You know what I mean? I could give a just so story involving the sun, involving salt and other things, but I mean it would just be speculation. It doesn't mean anything. I don't know.
I guess since they started the rumors about, well, the gas escaping into outer space, I don't even know why they would say that, right? Why? I mean, there's gas giants supposedly out there. Why would gas escape here, right? It's all ridiculous. But I think that since they basically stuck to that story through NASA, they really don't like to address the hydrogen cycle anymore. I think that's the reason why there's little information about it.
And nobody's researching it because nobody's thinking outside of heliocentrism. So they just go, yeah, and it just comes back in water forms. And they don't go into, well, how can water be forming if we keep losing all this hydrogen? If the hydrogen is not being replenished? You know what I mean? If you use up all your sugar and it's not being replenished, you don't have any sugar. You're not going to do it.
Well, they have this problem with like geology and even like, well, climate research, right? The problem is with like the climate change ideas and all that is they're literally based on a heliocentric model. And so the way they establish these things is totally nonsensical. And yeah, of course, the world's never going to address that because, yeah, it's supposed to be a ball. And that's what they're basing it on.
Exactly. There's surely brilliant people out there who have so much knowledge and understanding, but they take this left path because they're under the preassumption that they live on a globe in a heliocentric, universe, kind of like QE was many years ago. And it's like, it's just not after hitting home with them. Hang on a minute. None of this makes sense. You know what I mean?
They'd use terms like, oh, the Earth reflects the sunlight's heat back into space. A cloud blocks the sunlight from getting reflected back into space. It's like complete nonsense. No, this is just...
Yeah, they just make up stories and based on absolutely nothing. They have no validation for any of this stuff. But people just accept what they hear. They don't think. If you're working within, let's say, the nuclear arena, and that's probably not the right term, like you're going to have knowledge on things in nature well beyond what the average person has. But if your thinking is purely heliocentric, then there's going to be certain parts that you'll just pre-assume, and it'll be safe to pre-assume those parts because they won't cause an explosion or anything else, right? Because that's the thing about heliocentrism. You can pre-assume all these little things in all these different disciplines, and it doesn't make any difference. Right. You know what I mean? It doesn't cause you any problem in reality, let's just say.
Yeah, well, what I think would typically happen out there is that geologists and physicists would probably like not get along very well because the physicist is really about, well, the real knowledge of physics, if they're any good, right? If they're not like popular or whatever, but they're really serious about it. While the geologist gets heliocentric nonsense only, right? So it's not going to be compatible. They're going to get into arguments all the time.
Exactly. There was a guy, I don't see him these days, but he used to be on my channel a lot. I don't know if I removed him or what happened to him, but Geology Rocks, right? He's a geologist on the Globe side. And this guy was probably the most indoctrinated person I ever came across. You know what I mean? Nothing but purely heliocentrism. He couldn't think outside of that. And his whole job in his mindset was all based around how everything formed via heliocentrism, if you know what I mean. So you could never get any...
Totally ball reified. The whole profession, the whole lore is all about the ball. You don't get to see anything without a ball on it.
Yeah, well, pun intended, you could get no solid information out of the guy, right? Pun intended, solid. Right? Because his information, you'd have to go through Anthony tell you to find out whether it's all based, but it all comes back to some heliocentric idea. You know what I mean? So it nearly made him pointless. You know, kind of like Nathan was saying earlier with astrophysicists, you know what I mean? They're just pointless. This guy seemed to be just pointless because whatever he sees in the ground, he has a story in his head that already tells him what happened there, so he doesn't actually research as to what actually did happen there. You know what I mean? Yeah. Research is not done, you know, that kind of thing.
So it's like the the astrophysicists and the geologists are like the two sides of one coin. One is the ballologist and the other one is the spaceologist.
Yeah, exactly. That is exactly it. That you nail it. You know, because one is telling you about, will tell you about a molten iron core that they've never experienced, and the other will tell you about a sky vacuum they've never experienced. And they'll sit there and with a straight face and lecture you about some fantasy they have. You know what I mean? That's the problem. How are you supposed to get information about anything when the institutions that have the resources and finances to do this only produce idiots who are just parroting off what the person before them parroted off.
Right.
None of it meant anything.
Storytellers. They're all storytellers, and there's a story, a certain way the story is, and you could maybe elaborate on the story, and if everybody agrees, well, then it becomes part of the story, and now you're part of the story.
Yeah, it just becomes a big just-so story, as Nathan says, just-so story. And it makes so many of these people irrelevant. There was literally nothing I could learn off this guy, Geology Rocks. Because he may even have to tell me about, and it would be important, he can't differentiate reality from heliocentrism, so there has to be some heliocentric story added into it. It became impossible. The guy just became a joke to me. I don't mean to put the man down, but he just became a joke to me because it was like he was just a crazy guy with crazy ideas. He's a geologist, an actual geologist. You know, where do you go with that?
What's a geologist? The study of rocks?
Or the study of the ball Earth, right? And the astrophysicist is the study of space.
Study of pressure and time.
Yeah.
Pressure and time.
I got that from, you know, what movie did I get that from?
Shawshank Redemption.
Yes, indeed.
Well, if I go to the shop Adam works at, right, or Adam's shop, chemist, right, store, and I speak to Adam about something, Adam doesn't need to add in a molten iron core to give me information on something that will be of use to me in reality. To get me some, like, Adam doesn't need to say, well, this blah, 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 with that, if you mix the two of them, you'll end up, you know what I mean, with, some heliocentric nonsense. He doesn't need to do that. He'll tell me straight what is or won't, what will or won't happen, what's good or bad. I'll actually get some solid information that I can use. You know what I mean? In reality, I won't get that from a geologist. Not this guy, anyway. I can't say every geologist, that's not correct. But this guy was a geologist or is, and there's absolutely no way you could get that any information out of him that matters.
I think the key to turning all of these, whatever their fields are, is gas pressure without containment. If they could get a hold of that, and like when it clicked with QE, then maybe there'll be a difference.
Well, for some of them, yes. The people who are really doing something would sit up and go, you know, that is a good point. You know what I mean? They will do that. And you even have some of them who've even dipped their toes in that when it comes to the sun. Well, what's that guy, the French? He's a French name. I think he's French-Canadian, or he's French. I think he's originally a spectroscopist. But anyway, he disagrees with what they say about the sun, because they say, well, the sun will just, there's a sky vacuum. It can't be a load of helium and hydrogen, plasma and gas and whatever. It can't. You know what I mean? He disagrees with that. But he then still believes he's on a globe Earth. You know what I mean? It's like, this is the thing. So they separate themselves. Even at that level, someone will separate themselves. But
yeah, but see, a guy like that is almost there, though. Just a little nudging. And his eyes might
that's
be
the
open.
scary part. Sorry? Someone said something. Go on again. But that's the thing. It's the scary part. That little nudge. That's what they don't. But a lot of time, they're just not putting two and two together when it comes to that. They just carry on with their lives, everyday stuff, and they're forgetting. Hang on a minute. I'm supposed to be in a sky vacuum too. How is that possible? I'm breathing air, and I live in air pressure. How is this happening? I mean, that's just not triggering with these people.
Yeah, because of gravity.
Well, yeah. See, that's one of the problems. They have a lot of these people. They just have a pre-assumption of the reality of a thing called gravity, and this gravity is a force of attraction between masses, and this holds all the gas to the surface of the globe. It's like, such utter nonsense. Like, they don't even give that thought. Hang on a minute. But how would that work if this? But that can't work if this happens. Do you know what I mean? They're not giving this thought. Well, the real debunk of gravity is buoyancy. Like, the original one was buoyancy. And that's what they had to hijack and say it was caused by gravity. Do you know what I mean? But and as we all know, like, Einstein got rid of that force of gravity well over 100 years ago now. They're trying to get these. If you go to university, you could basically go to university and what they would call their science department. You could probably take half or more of what they call their science department and just throw everyone out the door. And nobody would ever. It wouldn't affect us in any way, shape, or form in a bad way. It actually affects us in a good way. You know, all these astrophysicists and all this, out the door. No one needs it. You're not improving anything. You're not doing anything. You're just talking a load of nonsense, making up heliocentric stories. You know what I mean? We can make up our own stories. We don't need you for that. We don't need to be paying you loads of money and giving you loads of grants and have you on television telling people what's what about your story. You know what I mean? We don't need any of that.
So, a scientist is someone that does experiments, right?
Well,
without the experiment, it's not science, correct?
Well, yeah. It's without a valid hypothesis, it can't even be an experiment. Isn't that it?
So
and without that means, yeah.
So then there should be a thorough house cleaning of those that are not doing experiments.
Well, definitely of the fields where no experiments can take place, like astrophysics. Do you know what I mean? And astronomy and stuff. Cosmology, there's no experiments can actually take place. Regardless of what they see, whatever natural phenomena they have, no experiments can take place. You know, so you can't call that science. Geology, that's not science. That's a study, but it's not science. And if that study is being poisoned by heliocentrism, then what good is the study?
Right. If not cleaning house, then at least re-identify and give a proper title. Pseudoscientists. Those that don't do experiment, we'll label them pseudoscientists, and that's what they should go by. And then they can tell their stories all they want.
Like, there's nothing wrong with astronomy. Astronomy is grand. It's a good thing to learn. There's a lot to learn in it. But that it is an observational thing, and that's it. It doesn't go past the observation.
Yeah, it's all
how good your telescope is. Sorry, Aaron.
So it's all optical. The field is purely optical, if they're honest, right? And, well, now astronomy is then the reification of that based on these presuppositions of what they are supposed to be.
Yeah, astronomy views things, then astrophysics takes these things and start making up stories about them. And then the astronomers start believing the stories. You know what I mean? So the astronomer thinks when they're looking at Saturn, they're looking at something physical or whatever, they have a story about it. When they don't have any, I'm not saying it is or isn't, I don't know what it is, but they will tell you what it is because they have a belief, because they were told what it was.
And I had hoped that we were gaining, I had hoped that we were gaining ground, but my wife is always on that TikTok, and the amount of nonsense that comes through there, all heliocentrism, everything, it's pointless. They ain't getting it. We got a long road to hoe.
Well, it's a bit like there's someone like Neil deGrasse Tyson now, or that type of person. Doesn't have to be someone famous like him, but someone of that ilk, who's an astrophysicist. In society, they will be looked up to, and that's the problem we have. Like, I remember, as an example, in Ireland, the Catholic priest, the local Catholic priest, had all kinds of powers that nobody else had, to get away with all kinds of stuff that no one else could get away with. You know what I mean? And they are heliocentric priests getting away with stuff that nobody else could get away with, because people are looking up to them as some kind of an authority, but they're only an authority on a story that has no relevance in reality. And that's the problem. People idolize, it's the golden calf kind of thing, isn't it? Not exactly, but you know what I mean. They're idolizing something that should not be idolized.
Alrighty then. That's obviously my cue to round out. So with that, I'm going to say another huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams. Hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!